Thank you. We have our technology rolling again. Thank you. So, thank you. Technology is rolling fully, including a video function for today. So the meeting had been recorded. Nevertheless, it's now being recorded and broadcast. So, nau mai haere mai in television land. Thank you for being able to join us. We are picking up after our short break there with a change in the ordering of the agenda. We are now going to item number 5.6, which is the Kaipura Arts, Culture and Heritage Strategy. Our guests are here to present that item and available for questions rather than being available online. So at this point, I'm directing people to page 285 of today's agenda. There is a recommendation that's written here and I am moving that, and I'm seeking a second for that. Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. And at this point, I'd like Jenny Rooney to please come forward for presentation with our guests from Creative Northland, Hinurewa Tahau and Olivia, who are here to present to us the Kypra Arts, Culture and Heritage Strategy.
Kia ora, everybody. Thank you for rearranging the agenda. Just like to introduce Hinu and Olivia from Creative New Zealand, Creative Northland, and they will be joining me today in the presentation. We're here today to present the Arts, Culture and Heritage Strategy and look at seeking approval for adoption of the strategy. The KDC actually identified that there was a need for the commitment to arts and culture in the long-term plan, and the elected members actually were very supportive in that commitment and for the growth of the arts and culture within the Kaipura district. The strategy will actually inform any future funding opportunities and for us to be able to implement strategy and the action. Extensive consultation throughout the Kaipura district, and we're hoping today that we are able to have this adopted. So I'm taking that my report is read, and we're all available for any questions if you would like to ask us any further questions on this strategy.
Thank you, Jenny Rooney. Questions for clarification? Councillor Delavaris Woodcock.
Yes, can you please explain the role in the strategy for elected members, the future council elected from the people, and what role they will have in terms of implementation of the objectives of the strategy? Or can you tell me, and also as part of that, who is going to implement it?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, well, you can and I can.
Tēnā te mihi ki o koutou, runga te kaupapa tara nei, tēnā koe e tarangatira, e te wahine toa, nā mihi nui ki e mahana, anō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa, tēnā koe Victoria. Thank you for that question. So, with any strategy, it's the responsibility of councillors, community, and Creative Northland. Creative Northland is the regional arts organisation for Te Tai Tokerau, and we're mandated across the region to ensure the implementation of the strategy. Post-election, and whatever that outcome would be, that then Creative Northland would be coming to talk with people like Jenny, with councillors, those who have an interest in arts and culture and heritage, about how we implement this. You may remember when we met last time, we did present to you an investment implications paper as to what that would look like, but no strategy is done.
Yes, could you just talk to what that would look like, the investment part, please?
Okay, sure. So the investment part, for us, for Creative, so if I may, I have to talk from a Creative Northland perspective first. So this has been a community piece of work that we've gone out broadly and consulted with toi Māori artists and practitioners, and then non-Māori arts and practitioners. And thank you to those councillors who gave us feedback, Councillor Vincent and Erin and Mayor Smith. I really appreciate that, and Victoria yourself as well. So the investment implication is that we're asking in the annual plan and for long-term plan is that you looked to invest 20,000 to Creative Northland to support the delivery of the plan. We've also provided a investment implication as to what it would look like for further investment on a 3-year basis. So that's year 1, year 2 and year 3 of action. And I think because I haven't brought the paper based on memory, excuse me, I haven't got the exact figure for you, but we're looking at around about 186,000 that may need further investment for certain aspects of the strategy to be delivered. Very well aware that Kaipura Council may not have that investment. However, if our partnership is working well together, because it is a tri-partnership, then it's looking at ways and means of what could be fed into the long-term plan and what could be delivered in an annual plan, and what role Creative Northland has as a charitable trust structure. As all of you know, we do have the ability to apply for funding to ensure the delivery of certain aspects. But there may be some other aspects of the strategy in the action plan that are specific to council. One of those may be around heritage, for example, where there's a number of areas of significance, which are areas of wahitapu, which may be part of extension of your current heritage plans, where there may be some levels of an implementation, where therefore the partners may not be just Creative Northland, they could be Ministry of Culture and Heritage, Heritage New Zealand, gosh, I can't think of all and community and iwi, for example. So then you have to bring those partners together. Who does that? Creative Northland can do the consultation, but I would presume that we would do that together. Does that answer your question, Victoria?
Yes, so that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am a bit troubled by this because I did forward my comments the day after the last briefing at the beginning of the month. That some of the typos got addressed by rewording the whole paragraph, and others just got ignored. I still don't know what a cross saw is, for instance. Some lower order things that of that ilk that I still have concerns about, like before adopting the document, I think they need to be straightened out. Then there's I had a distinct memory that it was the sense of this meeting at our briefing that we wanted to see the vision and mission at the front of the document rather than halfway through it. But nothing seems to have been done about that. Perhaps more in the realm of the typo type thing is I think we're still referring to about 5 spatial plans in the district when we have one, and there's references to region when it should be district, stuff like that. I also made a plea for recognition of the fact that part of our heritage comes from the Albertlanders, which you yourself may have some familiarity with, Mr. Mayor, and that message doesn't seem to have got through. And I did check back on the draft as presented on the day back in August and the current version we have now, and there has been some significant rewriting, which might be a good thing. However, there was a roundabout
question for clarification, Councillor Vincent, please.
Okay. So I could, with all these things I'm itemising, I could say, well, why didn't they get put in? So that would be and I'll continue with the highlights or the lowlights. There's an opportunity in relation to somewhere around about the mention of Jane Topia. There was a reference to the influence of colonialism in its impact on Maori art. I would have thought, and I did make mention in my previous comments, that would be a good opportunity to make reference to the Reverend Mr. Gittos, who was, I understand, responsible for the removal of these carving works, which he termed graven images, in an offence to his Christian beliefs, from many marae. For example, Otamatea marae, you go there are no carvings, and that's attributable to him. I think that's part of the story, which perhaps should be referenced in the strategy. And I didn't, like, that was one of my notes that didn't get picked up. And then I have to say too, I'm troubled by the statement in terms of the action plan, which put it as a question. Why haven't we got the long-term plan outcome that this connects to, recognising that this is a subordinate document to the long-term plan, in my thinking? I could be wrong on that. Why do we not have that, which I'm rapidly trying to scroll through to find it, where we come to as a in terms of the action plan, where we can get to, with me, plan. Now, the LTP outcome that relates to it, as it's referred to in this document, it's quite appropriately, celebrating diversity, our local heritage and culture is valued and reflected in the community. That to me is...
Your question,
Okay, so
Councillor Vincent, said, can you put Norera in summary, your question, please? There's a lovely long preamble.
okay. Okay, well, I can perhaps save this next bit to its talking time, statement time.
Yes,
but I'll just...
It's been a lovely statement so far. Your question, please,
Okay,
Vincent.
it is that the suggestions that I made in my comments hadn't all been picked up.
Fair enough comment, Councillor. So first comment as to around the vision and mission being halfway through the document. You may recognise that the vision is right up front. We didn't put the mission up front, but we put the vision because the vision is the most important component to a strategy. So that is actually on the the second page, and it's in the inside front cover front page. So that's right there, but Councillor. But the mission, yeah, we've kept it where it is in the centre of the page so people can go straight to the centre. In comment two, why haven't we picked up on all of your comments? Actually, we went through each one of your comments and determined what we thought was of value and relevant and what was already there. So what I can tell you is that in your points around funding, I think you should be explicit that one pathway to fund implementation of the strategy will be for council staff, will assist community groups. We determined as a team that was given. And to your point as to around the contributions around the GLAM sector, the strategy is for us, we know what the value of what you've invested in already through the Creative Community scheme, but that's not for this document to talk about, but Creative New Zealand already have that information. In relation to the description of the cultural landscape, you might like to include Northern Bass. We did do that. Somewhere on page 9, you might like to make reference to Reverend Gittos, who I understand was responsible for the removal of much of the carving, graven images. We didn't include that because in some ways it's a negative around tikanga Māori, and it wasn't for us to actually give that story. We did talk to Fiona Kemp about it. I did share it with her and she gave us kōrero back what we could use. In relation to the last paragraph in part 10 to cross-saw, the cross-saw is part of your narrative, and you may remember that in here in this document, it does give reference to the person who wrote this narrative originally, and to be fair to her, in that corridor is as much as possible. So apologies that we didn't include that bit around the cross saw. As to a cross saw, well, I believe that is an amazing piece of machinery that is used in the cutting of wood. And therefore the sculpture was to recognise that narrative between our Dalmatian community, our Māori people. So that's that one there. In relation to third paragraph, right from the start, that we can achieve both, I think does not belong in the strategy. We made sure we went through and took those things out. In relation to page 14, for spatial plans covering the district, we went through the spatial plans and looked what was relevant to the document. Not all your spatial plans are relevant to here, but we have made an action point in the action point about looking at those spatial plans and what the relationship is between architecture, design, and working with your local community.
The point I was getting at was we have one spatial plan,
Yes, you do have one, and we do recognise it,
except that you've listed half a dozen.
because you have a number of plans that are relevant to the arts and cultural heritage. It's not just one document. You've got about a half a dozen documents there that where arts, culture and heritage interconnect and collaborate across. You know, like your Mangawhai plan, for example, that interconnects your Kaipura heritage, that interconnects your spatial plan, interconnects the long-term plan. So that's why we've mentioned them, Councillor Vincent. In relation to point 8, we didn't really get to have a discussion about the vision. We took that point and we looked at the vision again. I didn't personally go back to our stakeholder reference group, but our General Manager of Capability did go back to our stakeholder reference group. There was nothing that came back or feedback. Liv, am I correct in that? Yeah, so the vision is what the vision is, and I really thank those councillors who gave us feedback as to what you thought we needed to improve in that vision. So the vision is very much based upon community and your feedback from your last workshop. In relation to your points around page 17, page 21, we have looked at around action plan. There was one point that you made around Goal 3, Action 5. Now, you're right around the Albert Landers, and apology, we do make mention to the Cody Museum, and we make mention, and I have to find the page, so I might have to stand corrected on that one, Councillor Vincent, that perhaps I have not used that word Albert Landers, but let me look into that. And can I tell you, there's always time to make that change. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. There was one point, though, that you raised, and it was around the words of using cultural in regards to, and if I just made here, Goal 6, Year 2, is proposed to have a youth facilitator for non-Māori as well. In that particular statement, we're actually referring to cultural in the sense of it's fluid, it's not specific to Māori in that case, and the cultural youth advisor is about a person to work in that space, but not based on ethnicity. So you're right, there were a few typos, and Mayor Smith pointed that out to us again when he gave us feedback, and we had one of our people go through just in the last week to ensure that we'd picked up, and I'm pretty sure we've picked up on pretty much, I can never say 100%, but I would say 99.5%, though we were sitting having our coffee before we came here, and Olivia did find it was a double spacing. I had to take a deep breath. But anyway, I hope that answers your questions, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you. A quick question from me. So in the nature of what you're just explaining here, Unurewa, to what extent is this a living document?
Well, arts, culture and heritage strategy should always be a living document. They're moving. It's a moving feast. Arts, culture and heritage cannot stay static. So therefore, there's always room for things to change in this document. Certainly within the action plan, it's only for the first 3 years and needs to be reviewed, probably before we get to the end of the third term, to determine what has been achieved, so that then we can set the next lot of objectives for the next 3 years. So that means, with community, with yourselves, those of you, who have love for arts, culture and heritage for the region.
So with that then.
Thank you.
If I could
Sorry.
continue on, or
Sorry, so I think councillor Vincent, we've had lots of your questions. Thank you, because there are other elected members with questions. Councillor Larson, then councillor De La Varas Woodcock. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the point that was raised earlier about reference to spatial plans and other plans in the document. And the reason that I want to ask is because this is probably one of the things that is most misunderstood by our constituents, knowing the differences between different plans. Could you tell me on what page, please, those references that were referred to as in which paragraph, so I can see what's actually...
It's on, I'm not sure the page number, Jonathan, but it's strategic fit.
Page 386 of your agenda, councillor Larson.
In the actual document, in the actual strategy document.
Oh, it's page 18. So it's page 18, strategic fit, he pai roitaki, and we've named several documents that we reviewed. Part of our methodology for the strategy, councillor Larson, is that we're requested as part of our methodology to look what the interconnection is with all your strategies and what aspects of creativity or the creative economy may be affected. So that's part of our research, part of our methodology, and so we just want to name them for you to ensure that you know, whatever you're doing, there's an aspect of creative development.
Okay, so on that page, on the third column, you have listed the some of the documents that you've referred to.
Yeah.
And you've listed spatial plans plural.
Yeah.
And you've got parts 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And then you list separately a Mangawhai spatial plan. So we have one spatial plan for the whole of Kaipura.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't a separate Mangawhai spatial plan.
Okay.
In reference to that. And I think it's a point that someone's really tried to make.
Okay, well, that's fine. If it needs to be corrected, councillor Larson will
Does need-
correct it. Yeah, we will correct it, but nobody's corrected us on that until this point. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor De La Varas Woodcock, question for clarification.
Yes, so just returning to the Mayor's question about it being a living document, I'm just wondering who makes it live. From the responsibility for the strategy on page 295, it says councillors are only to have oversight from a fiduciary perspective. So the $186,000 of ratepayers' money, presumably, it says council's executive leadership team have oversight of the strategic delivery and action plan. So that's the start. And then it says implementation of the goals as outlined in the high-level action plan sits with Creative Northland. So can you please explain how the people of Kypra who will pay the rates for the contribution to the finances are going to get elected representation to guide more art in the district to happen from that investment? If the work to implement it is done by executive staff members that may not live in the district and Creative Northland that resides in Whangarei.
Thank you, councillor. Creative Northland is a regional organisation, so we have a responsibility across the region to ensure that arts, culture and heritage flourishes. Our role is to build the capability of our sector and our creative artists. Therefore, our current funding for delivery in Kaipura, and if I be unkind to you, we don't have to do anything in Kaipura because we're not funded by you to do anything. But our responsibility is to our communities and to our people, and you as our elected representatives are those that we look for guidance from as to around how we can support the community, how we can enable creativity to be seen. So
I'm just understanding how it's not explicit. It's here in the strategy that the council elected member is only to deal with fiduciary, which is the money part.
But but that's your responsibility.
But then it doesn't say how, there was no implementation role or governance role for us to inform the implementation. It's not, it's written out.
Well, councillor, from my perspective, if I may, Mayor, is that if councillors want to have an implementation role, they can. For example, if I may, is it okay, councillor Collins, if I use you as an example?
Sure. Don't know what's coming, but go for it.
For example, as you've had a conversation with me, is that you are very heavily involved in theatre as a practitioner. So you have a governance role to ensure, that you talk to our creative practitioners. You then also working at the community. So, for me, that's a really great relationship and partnership. But there's a community outcome there. So so for me, as the ex-general manager of Creative Northland, is that my role is to, if I'm lobbying, I'm going to lobby you directly because you're my councillor, but you understand, Victoria, and we've had those discussions. I'm going to lobby those who I know who love arts. I know we've done it with you. Karen, we've done it with you. We're going to lobby you because we want to ensure that there is sufficient funding within these walls to ensure that this strategy can get delivered, yeah? So for me, you are very much fiduciary. If we can get the pūtea from you, that then enables us, Creative Northland, with our community to be able to implement, yeah? The thing is that the only fund that you have currently is the Creative Community Scheme. And we're funded from Foundation North to ensure that we can deliver. And we have a creative advisor who works in this region, which has been Olivia Garelja. And we're hoping that long-term with the implementation of the strategy, with your support, that we can actually put someone in here that may be working up to, rather than once a fortnight, who could be working in here, 1 day a week, because we know what type of work's required. Kypra is very important to our footprint, so that's great. And so, yeah, that's all I can say, really.
All right, thank you. Mr Maris?
Yeah, through you, Worship, if I
Yeah.
could. Look, I just want to sort of bring us back to the overall picture here. So at the last LTP, there was significant feedback from the community about the lack of funding and the lack of focus of this council in this sector. You all told us to go ahead and work with the sector and find out what we can do. So we've done that. We got some funding, luckily, to enable that to occur, which is what's been presented to you today. The first step is obviously the strategy. We can't ask a future council to fund anything without any backing or any strategy or any policy, because we'd get kicked out of Dodge for that. Fair enough. So this strategy is the first step. Bear with me, Councillor Delabarras-Woodcock. So it's key that we have a strategy to work to first, and this is why this is in front of you. It's in front of you because this is part of the LTP that you adopted and you asked us to do, right? Bear with me. Next step, of course, is the funding side of things, and that's separate from the strategy, and that's for future councils to make their decision on. As is normal, we would go either through an annual plan process or an LTP process to do that. And we would provide the detail for the community to see what that funding would be for and what it is part of. And the community at that point, as is normal for an annual plan or an LTP cycle, would provide their feedback to the council, and you would make decisions, but the incoming council would make the decision based on that. So there is still a lot of space for the community to have their say, to understand what funding has been put forward and whether or not they support that for an incoming council to make the decision on. I just wanted to sort of clear that up.
Thank you for reminding everyone of the part of the process that we're up to. Councillor Delabarras-Woodcock, your question for clarification.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. In another month, Mr Maris, will be a new council. Can you explain how the new council has an opportunity to feed into the strategy?
So through your worship, the strategy hopefully will be adopted by this council because it's done through that LTP process, as I just described before. Now, the next step, once the strategy is adopted, is to then look at what we need to include in future annual plans and LTPs. And Councillor Delabarras-Woodcock.
With respect, but you haven't answered my question. How is a new...
Sorry, Councillor Delabarras-Woodcock, Mr Maris absolutely has.
Feed into the strategy?
Sorry, Councillor Delabarras-Woodcock, this is extremely frustrating. The strategy, while it may be a living document, feeds into opportunities for multiple, multicoloured discussions and opportunities further down the line for the incoming and next and future councils to say, yes, let's have arts festivals and let's do whatever they want to do. Those moments are later, that they come next. And this is part of the process. And so Mr. Maris has answered that question very clearly. Councillor Wilson-Collins, you have a question for clarification? No? Councillor Curnow.
This might be helpful. Just a question around how, do you have any sense of how the accountability for this might work in terms of coming back to council? So, you know, my understanding is council sets a strategy, council ensures funding is available for that strategy through our normal funding discussion processes, and that we hold to account. So those are sort of part of our role. Any thoughts on how, yeah, maybe Jenny or even Mr. Maris, just how that might work? Is it like a quarterly report?
Through you, Your Worship, yes. I mean, obviously there are many mechanisms for us to do that. It could be through a briefing, it could be through the CE's report, the exceptions report, that sort of thing. But the most important thing is, yes, we would absolutely commit to reporting to the council on the progress and where we're at.
Okay.
And from a community perspective, this becomes part of our business planning and annual monthly meetings and reporting against to determine what we are doing within the region so that our board can ensure, perhaps through you, Your Worship, is that for Jenny and Jason Maris, is that perhaps you might like to have a meeting with our board to determine what that governance on governance may look like. And I know that our board would welcome that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there further questions for clarification? Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Hinurewa. Thank you, Olivia, for your attendance and presentation this morning. So regarding this Kaipura Arts, Culture and Heritage, thank you.
Yes, leave.
May leave the table. Thank you. Please take a seat across here. Regarding this Kaipura Arts, Culture and Heritage Strategy, this council invited this work to be done and went out and sought funding for this to be done by external agents, in this case Creative New Zealand, so that they paid rather than our local ratepayers for the creation of this strategy for Kaipura District. We've never had one of these before. And as I look around the table and I go, Councillor De La Barris Woodcock, visual artist and poet, Councillor Larson, child star, Ultimateo Repertory Theatre. He was Oliver. Councillor Wilson Collins, of course, current theatre award winner. Councillor Wethy, famous ukulele player from Whangawhai. Councillor, in the same vein, Councillor Vincent, also ukulele player and regular Paparoa Market artiste and performer, among other things. Councillor Curnow, of course, has been very involved in Ultimateo Repertory Theatre as well and met all sorts of fabulous, important people in her life there. Councillor Joyce Parkey is involved in the arts across the community. Councillor Wills, I'm certain, does very artistic things on his properties across the Kaipra, including the Kaihu Valley Trail. And for myself, I also have a long history here of being involved in the arts here in Kaipura. To have a strategy here for the first time, and as with anything that is the first, it's not perfect and it's a work in progress, but oh my goodness, what a wonderful start we're making here. The community consultation that has been involved behind this work is significant. And so I want to thank the team from Creative Northland for all of that engagement, and our staff, I can't see Jenny, for all of that engagement with the community. Because as we just go around this council table and look at the representatives of the people of Kaipura, the arts are in us and of us and with us all the time. This is a significant opportunity. And regarding the future funding and opportunities and projects, which are quite different to the strategy, but the projects that may come in the future, well, heavens above, those are those own creative opportunities for councils in the future to find their way for what the people in those moments of time and what the community then in the future will want to do. The important thing for us as a council now is that we said in our long-term plan, we need to do this. And we went and got funding so that our ratepayers didn't have to pay. And here with this strategy, we have it done. And that is an important benchmark for the arts and creativity and culture and heritage, the creative and cultural economy of Kaipura District. Whatever opportunities are ahead, heavens above, they could just be absolutely amazing. But again, I'd like to thank all of the community out there who have contributed, our extraordinary arts community, who have not had, if you like, this po around which to gather, this space to lean towards that we have here. As a member of the Kaipura Creative Communities Committee in 1997, all right, before I'm sure Councillor Wilson-Collins was before you were treading the boards, Councillor Wilson-Collins, many years ago, I learned then about just how limited the funding was that we got, which was $1 for every citizen in the district. And our population hasn't grown that much for that important seed funding for arts and creativity. That alone is not enough. And so here we are 25 years later with a strategy. It's important. This is an important waymarker into the future for the district. And I'm happy that this is here today. I'm very happy about the engagement which has led to the creation of this document with our iwi partners of the council, with Māori artists of Kaipura, with other artists and experts and specialists in this space who know their stuff. And to get the arts rolling into the brighter future ahead and growing a better Kaipura that this council has set out to do, this is one of the important opportunities that we have. And I remind councillors of the 4 well-beings, which includes, around which we're supposed to be making all our decisions, which includes cultural well-being. And we certainly have a great little moment, a great little Kaipura moment for cultural well-being in this decision today. So I thank all of, again, Creative Northland, Jenny Rooney and the team, the community out there, all of our artists for all of their contribution to this moment, and I support this going forward. Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you. Don't quite know how to follow that. It's all very exciting and kind of said everything. I guess this strategy is one of the reasons why I wanted to be on council. We went through our long-term plan process. We listened to our community. We received many submissions telling us that we were missing something in our long-term plan. We took that feedback on board. Our staff took the initiative to apply for this funding. I thank them for that, so that we could then develop this strategy with Creative Northland. And I thank Hinu and Olivia for your work creating this. That's an absolute success as far as I'm concerned. It shows the positives of community consultation. It shows that we have listened to the people in Kaipura, and we have actually been able to develop something black and white that can then be used moving forward with our incoming council into the future to actually foster the arts, culture and heritage in our district. It is thriving in certain places. There's amazing stuff going on. I could gloat, but I won't. And And just the fact that we can then foster and develop and nurture all that creativity that is going on in our district with this strategy, it's just good vibes all round. I think this is an absolute awesome start, and from this document, the opportunities can only grow. So I'm just full of warm fuzzies today at our last council meeting to be supporting something that I am so passionate about personally, but that the community has told us that they're passionate. So kia ora to everyone involved, and I'm just, so humbled and happy to be here today.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Curnow.
Yes, I'm also very happy to be here today and want to thank the team for their hard work on this document. I just want to take you back to a time when I was helping out at Otamatea High School, and the art in a van, that truck that had all the art, came to that school. And I was taking a couple of kids around that, and these other kids came in with their parents. It was after school, came in, and these two little boys had clearly never looked at art before, and some of it was quite sort of complex art. It was abstract, it was difficult. And there was a chap in the van whose job it was to take the kids round and help them unpick what they were seeing. And it was extraordinary looking at these little boys coming in uncomfortable, finding it difficult, didn't know what was happening, and having that understanding turned on in their heads. And you could literally see the light bulbs going on in those different parts of the brain that do creative thinking starting to form. So for me, and this has always been the case for me, with art is about how we think. It's about creative thinking. And it's about, of course, it's about recording our past and our present, but it's also about testing the boundaries of what we understand in our world and what our future could be. So it is socially and culturally vital. It's economically beneficial if we get it right. And it also has strong links to the environment. And I've seen in the climate change space, people use art as a way of exploring what does changes to communities caused by climate change look like, feel like, what's the experience of it? And it's those things that help us build deeper understandings and deeper ways of being able to consider problems. So that's the sort of the big picture sort of thing. Getting down to the nuts and bolts, nothing in councils happen without a plan, and surely all of us know that. You don't get anywhere in councils unless you've got a detailed plan that, gives you the map onto what you're going to do, and then that can go and attract funding and so on. And these things take time. So this plan does that. It gives us that roadmap. It plants many, many seeds that will enable that creative thinking to happen in our communities, which has to be good for our communities. So absolutely, I support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce Paki.
Thank you. I'd just like to say congratulations to the team. I also support this plan. I'm particularly interested in goal 6 because it won't come as any surprise. I am all about our youth and our rangatahi, and performing arts or culture and heritage is one of those vehicles that our kids use to navigate this ugly world that is upon them right now. And we're using art and culture as a means to deal with some of those wellbeing issues, particularly youth suicide. So we're right in the middle right now of bringing Mr. G, a phenomenal artist, to Dargaville to work with our kids. There is a production and an event happening on Saturday, the 10th of December, where he will be putting a mural in place here in Dargaville. Those things don't happen by accident. They happen by people who are committed to pushing these kaupapa along. So I think we are long overdue for a strategy like this. And the key word that comes out to me is living document. So that means it's not a final. It means it's breathing and living like the rest of us. And so it should be with a document like this. I love the colour, I love the vibrance of it, I love the energy that's around it. And I think as as it stands, I'm actually really happy with it because I know that it will just get better and that awesomeness is going to come out. We have living examples of where this is happening and we should be celebrating it. So, yeah, thank you very much to the team for pulling this together. Love it. Ready to make a decision.
Thank you. Are there further statements? Councillor Vincent, then Councillor Wills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's lots to like about this strategy. So I'll just tell you what I appreciate about it. Firstly, it's a joint venture. I hadn't originally conceived of it as that, but that's what it obviously is. And also I've gained a context of arriving from the current consultation process from the current P. It is also in the document, it says it is a living document, so there's potential for flexibility. And I guess a key thing for me too is that it did dawn upon me before Mr Maris had pointed out that this document is in effect going to be one of the subsidiary documents that we consider along with our 3-yearly cycle of the LTP review for as long as Kaipura District Council exists anyway. I had some reservations about it as it was previously set up with that, I guess the costings for the action plan, and I would have been concerned if we were committed through this document to that funding. But as I see it now, that can be resolved through the LTP process. So that addresses my concern. I still have reservations about it though, and it's something that I guess it's just a second reading that maybe had glossed over me previously, and I need to highlight that in order to be doing my job as a councillor. Now, quite rightly, the strategy rather, draws upon the long-term plan outcome of celebrating diversity. Our local heritage and culture is valued and reflected in the community. Now, the goal 1 says it focuses on the resourcing and celebration of Maori arts, culture and heritage, with Tiriti at front and centre, not only of this goal, but of this whole strategy. I see a conflict between the LTP outcome and that statement. And yeah, and I'm not entirely, well, I'm not comfortable with it as it stands, I have to say. Now that might be opening another whole debate, and recognise we've had a briefing on this. I didn't pick it up then, but my choice is either to say nothing or to say this now.
I would like to move to procedural motion.
And your procedural motion is?
This item lies on the table for the new council, in-country council next month. That will be sworn in the proper democratic process to adopt the strategy because it's for the new council.
Procedural motion. Mr Maris, can you just?
Your Worship, it's up to you if you accept the procedural motion. It is your call. Usually you take them after 2 speakers for, 2 speakers against. But we haven't had any speakers against, but.
So we haven't had any speakers against.
It's up to you.
I think I was about getting to that.
If you think it's reasonable to do so.
This is what I liked about the document, but I said I still had reservations about that particular goal. And that was as far as I got.
Right.
Through your Worship, procedural motions need to wait until the speaker's finished. So Councillor Vincent could finish his kōrero and then the procedural motion could be dealt with then.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Vincent, because you were interrupted,
Okay.
Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, had you concluded?
To draw it to a conclusion, I would, as things stand, I couldn't vote for the motion at this time.
Thank you. Right, so now at this point, the notion of there being a procedural motion having been requested needs to be assessed around the fact that we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 people speaking for it so far and 1 speaking against. That's in our standing orders, if you like, that's the measure. Yeah.
So through your Worship, as the chairperson, you have the ability to accept the procedural motion.
Okay.
If you think it's reasonable to do so.
Okay, thank you. So I think it is not reasonable to do so. And my reason for that being that it is this council which sought this work to be done, this council which put it in this council's long-term plan, this council that went out and got the funding, and this council that did the work. So I do not see the procedural motion being accepted at this point. Thank you. Thank you. But we can go to further statements at this point. Thank you. Councillor Wills.
I was the next one.
No, Councillor Wills was the next because as said, your procedural motion came in over the top, but Councillor Wills was next after Councillor Vincent. Councillor Wills.
Wait, your mayor.
Because I'm mindful of the day.
I'm happy to wait.
Okay, I'm mindful of the day. Not everyone may get to speak here.
Oh, now.
Not everyone may get to speak.
Okay.
Sorry, and because we've had one speak against, so.
Okay, okay, thank you, Mr Mayor, for the opportunity. I'm going to speak in favour for the strategy. I'm going to also say that I think it's a little bit rough and ready. It's not a polished item, being quite blunt. But even in the 2 months since the original document was presented to us, which was back at the start of August, I note that in their documents, they indicate that Creative Northland are still learning about what their involvement is. So they're still acknowledging that within their documents that they are still developing how they participate in this area. And I note that Phil AC's comments, I want to quote them, in his message in the original document. He said, arts, culture and heritage can take a beating sometimes as they are a nice to have and yet viewed as not having a vital role. Sorry, Phil AC's the chair of Creative Northland. And just interesting how negative that comment was 2 months ago. And now I'd like to quote out of his message from the finalised strategy document. Arts, culture and heritage are not a nice to have. They are an essential part of our community's identity. So even within Creative Northland, and it's been brought to our attention, there's room for improvement. The basic outline of this strategy is something that we can get on with, and it's as designated by our request in the long-term plan to have a contribution in this area of arts, culture and heritage. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, I'd like to tender my apologies for interrupting you, Councillor Vincent.
Nothing.
So the arts happen because we're human. They happen because they need to happen for reasons of appreciation, for reasons of protest. Arts are not going to be made to happen by the strategy being adopted. I cannot see the transparency, accountability or democratic process involved in adopting on the last day of a council a strategy that is to last 10 years, that has a forward from you, Mr Mayor, on the very last day that you will ever be a mayor of the district. And I'm concerned because I think, as other councillors have alluded to, is that it's undercooked. It's desperately calling out for the new energy, new vision and new commitment of a new council that the people will choose. And I'm also concerned, having been the chair on the Creative Community Scheme, I know what inhibits art. It's money for materials, for hiring venues, hiring tutors, for noho marae, for catering, for advertising, for technical equipment, for microphones, for all of the things that facilitate and make art happen. That is where the money should go. And I'm concerned that this strategy is actually feeding more bureaucracy, divorced from the people, and actually specifically, as it states in this strategy, there is no elected member representation in implementing it, other than approving a financial commitment from our ratepayers of $62,000 a year. And that concerns me because I am not, as an elected member, as someone that believes in democracy, able to support a strategy that is removed from elected representation and held by bureaucratic agencies, one being Creative Northland and the other being the executive team of the staff. To me, it's inimical to the creation of arts.
Thank you. Are there further statements? No further statements from elected members here. In a closing statement from me, I'd like to congratulate again the team for having done extraordinary work here. We've had an interesting discussion just now around what's going on behind this work and where it leads to next. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, I hear your concerns regarding a strategy being decided by a council at its very last meeting. I'll also point you to items number 5.4 and 5.5 regarding the Potutarangi Harding Park Reserve Management Plan, which is also a long-term strategy decision, and item number 5.7 regarding a Mangawhai Sports Ground, which is a long-term strategy decision, which doesn't have within it all of the future opportunities, but instead sets a platform in which the future opportunities for the future council will be able to be furnished in that space. That is the business of this council, is to be making decisions, and the decisions in the right order, and that's what we're doing here. And so I congratulate everyone for the work that's being done here. As a long-term arts person myself, and having a doctorate in New Zealand's creative economy, I'm particularly interested in where this work goes to, and I will be really delighted to see how this works. I congratulate again Hunurewa Taho and the team for Creative Northland and all of your expertise. Again, you're an expert yourself, Hunurewa, regarding New Zealand's creative economy. And the platform that we have here is setting up our future council for decisions that it will make in its good time with its community. So at this point, I'm calling for a division for the vote here, Mr. Maris, on adopting the Kaipura Arts, Culture and Heritage Strategy. Kia ora.
Councillor Curnow. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Against.
Councillor Joyce Parky.
Or
Councillor Larson.
Against.
Councillor Vincent.
Against?
Councillor Worthy.
For.
Councillor Wills.
For.
Councillor Wilson Collins.
or
Your Worship.
For.
Your Worship, that's carried.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So the strategy has been adopted. Kia ora, thank you. Moving on at this point, I'm mindful that this was our third decision of the day. Thank you, Hunurewa.
If I may just interrupt 1 second, on behalf of the Creative Northland Board and my team, we thank you for adopting it. We thank you for those who, for your comments, and we will take those on board. Also, on behalf of the Creative Northland Board, we want to acknowledge you, Mia, as an outgoing, and thank you for your leadership and guidance and within the creative economy, and to you, Louise Miller as well, and to your predecessor for interim, and to each of you councillors, all the very best for your elections coming up. It's not been an easy process, this, but we thank each one of you for your time. And on that note, we'd like to table the 15 copies, just for you guys, of the printed version of He Rautaki Toi Arohi o Kaipura. On that note, ngā mihi mahana ki a koe e te minita. Thank you.
Hold on.
And if you wish to use them as a bed stock, completely understand.
Kia ora. Thank you, Hunurewa. Right, moving on and back to item number 5.2, the Kaipura District Licensing Committee Annual Report Adoption. And so for this item, we have Dean Nurali presenting this, and I have a question for us regarding the title, Mr. Maris, of the item in the bold at the top versus the report that's actually being discussed here.
Sure, Dean can answer.
Dean.
Thank you, Your Worship. The question being how many hearings were held in the reporting period? That the
Yeah, title of the report, the item is that, but in the recommendation, it's different wording. Yeah.
yes, the title should read through Your Worship, the Kypra Territorial Authority Annual Sale and Supply of Alcohol.
Sorry, no, the title just in the agenda.
Oh, sorry, through you, Worship. So just the editorial thing there, the actual report is as per the resolution or the recommendation, sorry, in front of you. That's the Kaipura Territorial Authority Annual Sale and Supply of Alcohol Report. We've just shortened that for the agenda title.
Yes, but the date was incorrect.
Okay. So 1920, was it?
It did say 1920, yeah. So we're just
that's an omission. That's an
just
yeah.
checking what we're talking about. Thank you, just so for the avoidance of doubt here. Thank you, because sometimes we have 2 years of report or years out of line regarding what we're discussing. Thank you. So we're clear on that. So elected members, I'm seeking someone to be moving this item. Councillor Wills, thank you. And a seconder here, Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. Dean Nurali, kia ora.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry, and we're also being joined online by Mark Farnsworth, who's the chair of our district licensing committee. Good morning, Mr. Farnsworth. Sorry for the delay in this item for you.
That's no problem, Your Worship. You've just been listening to the interesting debate.
And Councillor, sorry, Mr. Farnsworth, we can't hear you there. Sorry, I'm not sure what that technology is.
I have unmuted my microphone.
Have another go, Mark.
Okay, Your Worship, can you hear me now?
No, there is no sound there. Could you try again, please, Mark? If you could just.
Yeah, I've tried again.
Oh, yes. Yay, bravo. Thank you. Technology is working. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It's been interesting sitting here marking assessments and listening to your debate on that last item. It brings back memories.
Very, very good. Thank you for your patience and consideration there. So, Mark, Mr. Farnsworth and Dean Nurali, I leave it to you for the presentation, please.
Good morning, Your Worship. I'm here today to report on the District Licensing Committee Annual Report and seeking the Council approval and adoption of the report to agree to forward the report to the Alcohol Regulatory and Licensing Authority, which is ALA. It's a real tongue twister with that Alcohol Regulatory and Licensing Authority. I'm trusting you will have read the report, and before the floor is open for further questions, I see I've been put a question forward yesterday regarding how many hearings were held in the reporting period. And I'm happy to report that they were 0 hearings, and that was due to that there was no oppositions or objections by the public or the other reporting agencies, being the Medical Officer of Health, Fire Service and Police. May I open the floor?
Thank you.
Questions to the
Questions for clarification. Councillor Curnow, thank you.
Really for clarification, but it's about the report. Is there anything in here that would keep you awake at night going, oh, that's a worry? We haven't dealt, yeah, we need to work on that.
No, it's one of those, through Your Worship, one of those reports that I'm happy to report on, that there's growth areas in this. There's things to do to achieve, but we meet all the aims and goals that are set before us at this stage.
Comfortable where it's at?
Very comfortable.
And how would it compare, how would our results compare to other districts?
For example, if you're asking about those, I forget the acronym now, but it's about visits from underage, marketing. But we didn't have any problems this year with the police with regards to underage drinking. Not been reported by the Medical Officer of Health for any alcohol harm conditions. On the whole, the Northland or national wise, there may be issues with excess alcohol, but it's not been drilled down to the Kaipura district level.
Okay, and that the chair would back you up on that?
I'm sure he's seen 182 applications. He may have something to say.
I think it's been a very interesting year and a year of, no work for the actual committee, but no problems have really come to the DLC's attention. We have been, vigilant in our own right and brought some matters to the inspectorate to deal with, but by and large, it's been a very quiet year.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? Councillor Wethy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question on the data. On page 2 of the report, you've got the comparison of applications determined. The 3 years under consideration, they go from 160, 228 to 182. Next page, you've got 3-year comparison of numbers and types of applications. And if you look at the total, over the same 3-year period, you've got 188, 213 and 184. Could you give some explanation why these two sets of figures don't line up?
Yes, Your Worship. What happens is you get reports received just before and just after the reporting year, and sometimes it takes 15 to 30 days for the external agencies to report on. So therefore, it's a movable figure. We can only report on what figures we've actually got as of the 30th of June.
Determined applications received.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. That's clear. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification?
Just one.
Councillor Wills.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one, reading it, despite the numbers fluctuating depending on timing, there's only been one on site that's gone and one new one. Is that correct? So it's basically the same number year on year of actual premises with licenses.
Yes, through Your Worship. That's just coincidental. Sometimes we go up and down within a range of, say, 10% of premises coming and going.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. But so just the feel that, because I've read the report and it mentions the numbers and the timing of that, but the actual feel of actual on-site licensed premises selling alcohol in the Kaipura district has not changed in the last 12 months or more?
Through Your Worship, could you please clarify that question again? It's not quite clear to me.
Taking out the COVID impact on and other issues on the actual licensing application timelines, the actual number of premises selling alcohol has not changed. Is that correct, reading this report?
Through Your Worship, yes.
So we've lost one and gained one?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Mark Farnsworth. You may stand down at this point. And so we'll go to Councillor Wills for his opening statement here.
Thanks for another clean report, Dean. When I say clean, something that we can be positive about. And I just wanted to clarify that last question before I now made my statement, that it's interesting to note that with the Kypra growth in our population, it's not been reflected in an increase in the number of licensed outlets. It's just an interesting note that I wanted to bring up, that it hasn't become like, dare I say it, our vaping operations that have become so widespread.
Your Worship, may I make a statement just to support what you're saying?
Not really, Dean, no, thank you. But thank you, because we're in political statements. So yes, actually, Dean, just to make this easier for you, if you would retire from the seat, then that'll help keep everyone focused here. Thank you. Councillor Wills, continuing, sorry.
Thank you. Well, I was trying to read Dean's mind as he left the table to see what he was trying to contribute then, but no, I'm just saying it's I do imbibe myself, to be fair, but it's good to see that control on the number of premises has remained in place, even though it's not reflected in population growth. So it's a positive statement.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Nothing further to add.
Are there further statements here? Statement here in support from me. I'd like to thank the District Licensing Committee through their chair, Mark Farnsworth. Kia ora, Mark. Thank you for the work of the entire committee. And of course, you've indicated here that the committee wasn't required to meet and actually that you were doing and receiving the processing yourself. So thank you for what you have done here and for your years of contribution to this important statutory function of Kaipura District Council. Please pass on our best wishes to the entire committee. Thank you. To Dean Narali, thank you, as Councillor Will said, for a very clean report again. This is neat and tidy and in place and in line. And of course, the content of it is also, as Councillor Wills has also indicated, not showing that we're pointed in the wrong direction. So as a community, it's important to know that council's work in this regulatory reporting space is right up to scratch. So congratulations to you for that. Thank you. Are there any further statements? No further statements. Councillor Wills, would you like a closing statement? No. Right, thank you. We're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Mark Farnsworth. Have a good day.
Thank you, Your Worship. All the best for the elections, people.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 5.3 in today's agenda, the adoption of the annual report 21-22. I would like to move this item as recommended, and Councillor Curnow is seconding this. Thank you. So to present this item, we have Graham Coleman regarding the more financial aspects, and Tracy Dean regarding, call it some of the more documentary aspects regarding the overall composition of the document and the writing there. And online, we're being joined by Bryce Henderson, our auditor, who will also be making a comment, but will be joining us online. So, Bryce, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. Thank you, Bryce. We can hear you. So thank you for that. So kia ora. So this item is onto the table. And so Graham Coleman, I'm going to hand to you to lead this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take my report as read, and I've highlighted in there the high points in the annual report, but just briefly, we ended the year with an operating surplus of 33.5 million. There was a lot of work done as part of pulling the annual report together around the revaluation of our infrastructure assets. Normally, we wouldn't have revalued all of our assets this year, but with the index price increases across that sector in terms of construction, we've had to revalue all of them. It's actually pushed our infrastructure assets up by another 99 million, which is significant. We've finished the year with a cash position of 21.8 million. A lot of that is actually held in the depreciation reserve and our contribution reserves. And the reason the depreciation reserves have increased is that we focused our work on doing work on the externally funded work rather than using our funds to fund infrastructure. In saying that, we did manage to complete $32.7 million worth of capital works. That's compared to 23.7 for the previous year. So we've done pretty well. And we've managed to hold our debt at 44 million. So that's unchanged from last year. I just want to draw your attention to a note that we've added into the annual report around the three waters, and that the auditors will be referring to that in their report as an emphasis of matter. So that's not a tag on our report, it's not anything like that. It's just something that the Office of the Auditor General has asked that all auditors include in their reports, and that all councils will be making a similar comment. There's a little bit of work still ongoing between the Office of the Auditor General and Deloitte's just around one performance measure. It's to do with the water quality measure. The Office of the Auditor General, because of the way that measure was sort of, I guess, substantiated, had requested that all auditors sort of put an emphasis on matter in the audit opinions. This council's done some more work to prove that we have actually met the standards, and Deloitte are just working through the final parts of that with the OAG at the moment, and we're hoping to have that finalised either today or tomorrow. But Bryce will talk to that a little bit further himself. I did have 4 questions from Councillor Vincent that came through before the meeting, so I'll just run through those.
Thank you.
The first one, you made a comment around a note that I'd made in my report around the 4 million, the 4 million surplus being less than planned. The reason I've worded it that way is the operating surplus includes all subsidies, whether we receive it for capital or operating, whereas the expenditure is purely operating. So there is a mismatch there, right? So it's not cost neutral in that regard. The next one around the comment that the Auditor General has asked the auditor to put in, I'm not going to comment on that. That's not my words. So
I realise that you're just repeating what they've said, but
Bryce may be able to add to that, but that's just the words that the OAG has requested that Deloitte put in the report. The next one was on page 69 of the agenda around the debt affordability benchmark. You've said that it's a little bit distorted with the external funding. Yes, you're correct, but that's just the definition of the graph. It's just how we follow it, really.
that's how it is.
That's how it is. And then the next one, you are correct that the operational control benchmark, second bar graph should be orange. That was missed. So we'll correct that under our editorial changes that we make as part of the annual report.
I think it's so validated, you know.
I'll hand over to Bryce just to make comment, and then we're both happy to take questions.
Thank you. Bryce.
Hi, thank you. Sorry I'm not there. I've actually got, I'll mention the dreaded C word in the household. So I didn't think it was appropriate to travel. It wouldn't have been, but
thank you.
But probably just in terms of, I wasn't quite sure of the question, but there was, in terms of our audit report, we have completed our work. We're subject to, as Graham talked about, subsequent events, which whatever comes out of today's council meeting. And secondly, what we refer to as the drinking water. But before I talk about that, just going back to the comment around the emphasis of matter around the three waters. So this is a standard template, so to speak, or wording, which will be applied across all the councils. And I had a conversation with Graham yesterday, so just a bit of clarification and literal interpretation is that there is a difference between the council owning the assets and the assets staying within public ownership. So what we're saying is the intention is the assets will remain in public ownership, but it won't be owned by the councils per se. And therefore, the wording we're referring to is saying the assets won't be on your balance sheet, but they are still within public ownership. So there is a literal interpretation, which I think might be behind the question after I spoke to Graham yesterday. The second thing that's actually, which is really, I suppose, the outstanding piece of work is in relation to the drinking water standards. So what this is about is last November, Tamati Arawi became the new water service regulator within New Zealand over all councils and water CCOs. And as a result of that, there have been some changes to the compliance and how you actually measure and report drinking water information. So prior to November 2021, we, the auditors, relied upon independent experts. These were assessors that were completed by the Ministry of Health, so they were completely separate to Kypra. And these assessors actually validated the compliance of the water measures and provided reports to Kypra and ourselves. And historically, when we reported the results of the water, drinking water information, we're using those reports as our basis for our conclusions. However, unfortunately, Tamati Arawa don't use these assessors, and they actually haven't got a system in place yet. So what this means is there's actually no independent assessor which would do this work for us in the current year. So what this meant was the OAG provided some alternative assurance options for us or for all the councils, and that was really two options. It was to get another third-party provider, and there is one which is commonly used called Y Comply. Unfortunately, they are fully booked up and Kypra couldn't use them. Well, the second alternative is for the auditors themselves, to complete the testing of the laboratories, etc. So that's what we've done. The OAG have mandated that really it won't just be an emphasis matter, you actually have to qualify the audit opinion unless this testing is done, and the testing has to be approved by them. And that's what Graham referred to. So we had completed the testing. We found no issues with the testing, which was pleasing. So we did what we thought we needed to do. But didn't identify any issues. And that testing has been sent to the OAG for review, and we understand that review will be completed today. So I suppose the point being is that our audit report may change depending upon the outcome of that review. But this is an issue for Kypra. This is an issue across all this local government and water CCOs. So that is the one outstanding point in our audit report. Otherwise, we've finished our work and are ready to sign subject to subsequent events and the completion of the OAG's approval on the drinking water measures. Probably pause there for any questions.
Thank you. That's clear, Bryce. Thank you. Are there questions for clarification on these matters regarding the audit report aspect which Bryce has just discussed? Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Bryce. I have to go back to that first item you referred to, the emphasis of matter, whatever it's called, regarding non-ownership of the three waters. I thought that was some pretty fancy footwork by the government in saying that we still did have ownership, even though by most recognised measures, and there's even some court cases underway to say that actually what they're doing is removing any semblance of ownership. And you've been bold enough just to simply say, we won't own them anymore. Do you think you'll have a job next year with auditing councils?
Councillor, please withdraw that question.
Okay, I'll withdraw that question. But if you'd like to expand on your explanation of that, I didn't really get it.
Well, the explanation is that wording is standard wording which the OAG have reviewed and would like to have in all the audit reports of the local government. So it's a standard wording. It's not, and I think the question was, it talks about the fact that services will be delivered. And what I was trying to clarify is, as I say, it's a standard wording. It's not Deloitte or Bryce Henderson wording.
No, but it's saying that the council will no longer deliver the three water services or own the assets required to deliver these services. It's pretty unequivocal.
That's what the wording says, correct?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? So I have a question for you, Bryce. This time last year, there were several matters of emphasis in Kaipura District Council's annual report. And for us for this year, the only item that appears to be there relates to the Three Waters Reform Program from the government, which, if you like, is not the work of this council. And then also in the works that you have done in the auditing process, you've found no other sort of, if you like, matters or problem areas for council here. That is, can we take that as a summary position here? So we're doing okay.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to answer that question in one go, but we have provided a report to the audit committee, audit trust, around the key focus areas. So in terms of the audit report, it is a clean audit report subject to the emphasis of matter, which is as referred to as a standard piece of wording across the whole sector, and then the yet to be decided standard wording sector work around the water quality. But apart from that, in terms of the work, you know, we are, as I said, we're happy to sign an unqualified opinion.
Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you. Sorry if my question wasn't so clear. I have a subsequent question for you here. The deadline for councils to adopt their annual reports is out to December. In the work that you're doing across other councils and from your collegial network of auditors, Kaipura District adopting its potentially today, having it on the agenda as per the original legislated requirements. How rare is that in the current year that we're in? Are most councils delayed or are they meeting the original deadline as we appear to be sitting at right now?
Again, difficult question. I am aware that within the councils that we internally review, you are one of the first councils to sign, and there are a number of councils which are signing in October. I couldn't comment outside the Deloitte network, but in terms of that, you are one of the first, I understand, in the councils that I'm aware of. You are one of the first.
Thank you very much. That's a very clear answer. Thank you. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Bryce. Thank you for your work for the council. I'm concerned about on page 93 of the report, the figure for land value in 2022 for operational assets, which I understand to be 3 waters assets included. So the value of all of the council's land, from what it appears, is $7 million. Can you talk to the market value of such assets that council owns and how that is reflected in the report?
Question for the auditors.
Property, plant and equipment.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find 93. Is that the property on that? Is it note 10A?
Yes.
Someone's trying to find it's probably easier for Graham, but those assets, that's the land under the. That's the land under the. Is it the 7017? So
yes.
I can answer.
Graham Coleman, if you could please appear with this answer. Thank you.
That land isn't to do with the infrastructure assets. They're actually included above as part of the infrastructure, so it'll be under water and wastewater. We have had the land under those assets revalued this year, so it's part of that revaluation work, but it sits up above under the infrastructure. The land that's down under operational isn't that, that's more parks and reserves. That hasn't been revalued this year.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification for Bryce? No further questions for Bryce at this point. Thank you. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, you have a further question for Graham Coleman.
Yes, Graham, my constituents have made me aware that they're struggling with the sharp increase in water volumetric and connection charges. And I see on page 83 of the report that in 2021, we had revenue from water that has increased to 2022 by $1,180,000. And I'm wondering where that revenue will get spent.
That will get spent on water assets.
on water assets?
It's a targeted rate, so it's water. So it doesn't get spread across to wastewater or stormwater or anything else.
Right.
It's targeted rate for water, so that's where it is ring fenced to.
So is that preemptory in terms of, I'm struggling to understand, because in the last financial year, we were compliant and achieved all of our New Zealand drinking water standards. Has there been a substantial increase in investment in the drinking water assets to reflect that increased charge to the consumer?
Well, there's been work on the infrastructure assets for water. Most of that funding, though, for the CapEx has come from the DIA through the Three Waters stimulation grants that we've been receiving. So that money, though, will sit with the water assets and it will be spent on water, whether it be operational or CapEx in the future.
So could you understand that could it be interpreted to signal rising costs for water delivery if there are to be a change of ownership and delivery under Entity A under the Three Waters reform?
Not sure what your question is, sorry.
I'll leave that, thank you.
I'd say, Councillor De La Varis Woodcock, that's beyond the scope of this annual report, which is necessarily looking in the rearview mirror.
Sorry, I was thinking aloud. Yeah, it was in.
Thank you. But thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? There are no further questions for clarification. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Tracy.
Hang on, you've only been looking at Graham's side.
Sorry, so I was just asking, sorry, all right, sorry. I'll ask again the same question. Are there further questions for clarification? Councillor Wethy.
Much a question of clarification is that you've got an incorrect issue in there, and I just for comms, on page 54 of the report, where you've got community funding, funds awarded to the community of 250,000 via the community grants, Mangawhai Mila account and reserve contributions funds. It's actually the reserve contributions contestable fund. We've got to make sure we don't let people think it's just the contributions fund, which is far, far greater in our collections than what we make available through that grants committee. So contestable fund. So could you please just amend that? Otherwise we're going to send the wrong signal out there.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Tracy. And thank you, Bryce, for your attendance with this matter today. Regarding the annual report and this adoption item, again, I would like to congratulate all of the staff for being one of the very first councils in all of New Zealand in this year that's been so completely disrupted by COVID and been disrupted by a set of reform programs that are creating a tumultuous environment for local government, for other changes within Kaipura District Council's staff, including shifting into a brand new building during the period of the creation of this annual report that we actually have here as Kaipura District Council, one of the very first councils in New Zealand to get their annual report up for adoption. And so I am delighted by that milestone being met, that original statutory deadline. Regarding the content that's here, of course, the annual report has come a very long way in the period of this council because the document has shifted, of course, from being a landscape version of a document to being a portrait version, actually literally of a document. So being a much more normal creature and much easier to read as a result. And so I'd like to congratulate the team on creating a legible document which tells a story and paints an extraordinary picture of a small council that's getting on with doing its job. We're here to make decisions. We're here to support and enable our community to get on. And the annual report is one of the key milestones that we have for that, is when we look in the rear view mirror, how did we do? Yes, we did this. No, we didn't do that. Okay. And so this document to me is very clear and straightforward. So I'd like to congratulate all of the team for that. And I'm noting that notwithstanding the Three Waters reforms, which is not the choice of this council, there are no other matters of emphasis for this annual report. That's significant to me. Again, we're doing a great job doing what we said we're going to do. So congratulations to everyone, and I'm pleased to be supporting the annual report. And I note that section D of the recommendations takes into account the opportunity to provide minor editorial changes to the document if there are any infelicities which elected members who are keen of eye may have noticed. So thank you to everyone who's behind the creation of this very important document at this time. Congratulations, Louise. Thank you. Councillor Curnow.
Yeah, I want to echo those thanks. It's great to have this report ahead of schedule. Once again, we have a good track record of doing that even through these turbulent times. It is an annual report that's a little bit lopsided because of the external funding that's washed through council during the time. But despite that, it's clear and it is there and it's ahead of time. And I just, having given feedback on the original version of the first section that was provided, I want to thank staff for the comprehensive year in review on page 55 of the agenda with all those wonderful things that have been achieved. So it really is good to celebrate the successes of the year. I want to offer my thanks to Bryce and the auditors for their work once again. It is good to have a trusted partner or service provider in this space, and you have been that once again, so thank you. And finally, I just want to thank all those who contributed some of the beautiful photos in the document. They're really lovely, and I not all of them have a name associated with them, but some of them do, and I want to thank those people for those photos. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Further statements. Councillor Withy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think congratulations have got to go to the staff who have actually done the work to underpin this annual report. Obviously, in the Audit Risk and Finance Committee, we've had the benefit of a much more detailed presentation from the auditors, from Bryce, and I have to admit we've got through to this annual report without the previous year's huge focus on the asset management and revaluation. I think that Sue and Graham in particular and the team have done a remarkably good job of progressing our quality of our asset register, which was a major issue a year ago for the auditors. And that's been probably one of the most single biggest pieces of work we've done to take it for a while. So I think the council certainly has come a long way. We've got to a financial position which I think is so different from what it was when many of us joined council back 6 years ago, that it's just amazing that we've come this way and we've now got a pretty solid balance sheet, and I think we can all be proud of that. And also we've got an annual report that in fact is actually quite user-friendly. People can read it, understand most of it, and actually enjoy the dialogue about what council's done with some nice pretty pictures to go along with it. So I think all in all, we should all be very proud of where we've got to with it. So I certainly support its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not certain if all elected members want to speak here. We've had 3 speaking for this item at this point. I'm in your hands. Are there others who are burning to speak, or are there people who want to speak against this item? I'm just keen for us to keep moving.
Just like to thank the staff for the great effort they've...
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Yes, again?
That's it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. All right, thank you, yes, so, yes, acknowledging all the staff again, just in closing, and also the staff behind the staff who've put the annual report together, the staff out there in staff land, yeah, who are doing all the work, on the ground. So congratulations to the entire organisation, Louise. So this is huge credit to you. And I'm delighted that we're about to be putting this up for adoption for you while you are still here as our Chief Executive as well. So thanks to you and your leadership of your executive leadership team, and because the leadership has come from the top there, from you. So thank you. Thank you. So we're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Against? Carried. That was a unanimous vote, Mr. Maris. Thank you. At that point, we're going to adjourn for lunch. Congratulations again. Thank you, Bryce. It has been adopted. We're going to adjourn for lunch, and we will resume, please, at 10 to 1. 10 to 1. Thank you. 20 minutes. Thank you. Basic. We have a quorum. No mai, haere mai, welcome back. And we're picking up our meeting this afternoon at item number 5.4. Now, this had earlier been in the distributed agenda, item number 5.5. Remember, there's been a reordering of the agenda here
Right,
today, so, and their titles are very, very similar.
wrong way round.
So they're now the other way around. So we are talking here about the item which is in the PDF version at page 199 of the agenda as distributed, which is the adoption item. It's entitled Reserve Management Plan for Harding Park and Old Mount Wesley Cemetery Adoption. That is the first of these items that we are looking to. And then we have a recommendation which is here on the screen for that, again, which is slightly different from what is written in the printed distributed agenda. So it's been corrected here regarding the naming of the paragraphs. So, but I'm just confirming that so that everyone is aware of exactly what we're discussing here today. Thank you. So at this point, Councillor Wethy is moving this.
The other member of our council who's absent at present is on the committee.
I'll second.
Councillor Kerno is seconding this. Thank you. So Mark Schroers, good afternoon. The floor is yours, please, to lead us through this item. And I would also say, Mr. Maris, you may be able to also contribute if required regarding some of the contextual governance matters here regarding the delegation and the second decision that we have to make as well. But between the two of you,
I'm pretty sure Your Worship, Mark was well across this.
Yeah, between the two of you, we'll get this clear. Thank you. Mark.
So there's two reports on this matter. Maybe it's useful if I talk to the process together in terms of the two steps in it. So the first thing which we've got here is we've got a decision for the Kaipura District Council as the administering body of the reserve to essentially pick up this bit of paper which is coming recommended to you from the Harding Park Committee. So essentially picking up this bit of paper and saying, we're going to grab this with both hands and adopt it as our reserve management plan for the reserve which we administer. Then you got to go cap in hand to the Minister of Conservation and say, this is how we would like to administer our reserve. Can you please approve this reserve management plan for us to go and administer our reserve in accordance with this reserve management plan?
Sorry, so that second part that you mentioned is the next agenda item.
And that's part of this agenda item as well. So that's the council, it's the Kaipura District Council going to them, applying to the minister, so submitting the plan to the minister. So you're adopting it and saying this is our plan for Harding Park. We submit it to the Minister of Conservation.
And the next report is the Minister for.
You've got to take your Kaipura District Council hat off, because the Minister of Conservation has delegated to the Kaipura District Council to do this piece of work, but it's not the council work, the Minister of Conservation's work, and you are the delegate of the Minister of Conservation. So you put your hand on as the delegate of the Minister of Conservation, and then you consider, and there's an extra piece of attachment that had to be included with that report under the Reserves Act. You've got to give full consideration to everything there as the Minister's delegate, and as the Minister's delegate, you will make a decision whether or not to approve the reserve management plan that's been submitted to you by the Kaipura District Council. So that's the two reports.
That's in the two agenda items fit together like that. Thank you for making it clear. So we're at the first of those, which is adopting the management plan in the first instance. Yes. Okay. Thank you. That's very clear. So are there questions for clarification here? No questions for clarification. Simple. Thank you, Mark. You may sit back. Thank you for this, the rest of this item Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Withy.
Thank you. Yes, I certainly support the adoption of this plan. It's been through the Procedural Governance Committee, and we've several meetings discussing that and the work with the stakeholders who had a good opportunity and have certainly taken that opportunity to put their views forward. And these have been taken note of and were appropriately included in the plan. I think this is a good foundation document going forward. The key thing will be, of course, is to take note of the action plans, and this will be over to the new committee and staff to make sure that what we have outlined going forward is actually going to happen. I'm quite excited about the opportunities that are up in that park, and all those opportunities in terms of site redevelopment and made into a tourist attraction and education centre, and some of these other initiatives hopefully we'll start seeing the light of day during the next 3-year term, and all of that is laid out here. So I think it's been a positive exercise that both Councillor Joyce Parky and I have been part of, and as such I certainly recommend it in the that has been presented to Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curnow.
I'll just defer to the member of the committee in terms of the report, but just speaking to the process, I seem to remember, Mark, that when this was last done, it did have to go off to the minister, was that right? Yeah.
We're in statements. Questions now.
I seem to remember it did have to go to the minister, which did slow the process down. So this is a bizarre and funny little process, but it does mean that it takes effect immediately, which is good.
Thank you. Are there further statements regarding this item? Are there any statements against adopting the Potutarangi Harding Park Reserve Management Plan? Simple. Right, we're putting this item to the vote now then. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Mark, welcome back to the chair for the second part of this fascinating process, which is in which Kaipura District Council is now the receiving item as receiving organisation as the delegate for the Minister of Conservation here. Yes? So can you please talk us through this again?
So as a delegate of the Minister of Conservation, you're receiving an application from the Kaipura District Council, or you're receiving a reserve management plan from the Kaipura District Council, which has been submitted together with a summary of the matters raised by submitters and the extent to which they've been incorporated or not incorporated in the final plan, and been asked to approve this reserve management plan. To pick up on the earlier point there is to note that Kaipura District Council is the administering body of the Harding Park and Old Mount Wesley Cemetery, and has adopted this reserve management plan to apply to those reserves. There's also the Potutarangi Historic Reserve, which is not owned or directly administered by the Kaipura District Council. So that's going to follow its own process, same document, but following its own process. And that doesn't have the delegations, so that has to go to the minister herself.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is important. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? So just to tease that apart, when we talk about the Potutarangi Harding Park Reserve space, as you've just described it there are actually different delegations for the different component parts of the location. Yes.
So what is, you've got one document, just the Rangi Harding Park Reserve Management Plan. So it's one document, bit of paper. Then you've got two administering bodies, One being the Kaipura District Council, administering body of the Harding Park and Old Mount Wesley Cemetery. And then you've also got the Procedural Joint Management Committee, which is established under Te Reo Host Settlement Claims Act. So that is the administering body for the Procedural Historic Reserve. And both these administering bodies have essentially picked up the same bit of paper and both said this is our management plan, our reserve. In the case of the Kaipura District Council, the council has the delegated authority to then approve it as the minister delegate. The Procedural Management Committee does not, so they will be submitting to the Minister of Conservation for that approval.
Thank you. Crystal clear. Mr.
Mover and a seconder. Sorry.
Mr. Maris, sorry, and we don't have a mover and a seconder here, so I'm seeking a mover here, Councillor Joyce Paki, and a seconder here, Councillor Wethy. Thank you. Are there any further questions for clarification? Very straightforward. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for making this clear for us today. Councillor Joyce Paki, statement.
Thank you. I just want to commend Mark and the team for working with us up there at that site. It's been an interesting journey over the last, say, 2 terms, trying to get some movement up there. There's been a lot of discussion and debate, if I'm honest, but I think through our meetings more recently with you on there, Mr. Wethy, we've been able to get to some common ground. And I'm really looking forward to how this lands, be that with the new council coming in and where they progress this to. So, yeah, well done to everyone involved.
Thank you. Councillor Wethy.
Nothing further really to add. I think what Councillor Joyce Barkley has said is a good summary. We have made some good progress, but more importantly, we've set a blueprint up for the next 3 years. It's very, very important. So that's all.
Thank you. Are there further statements here? Any statements at all? Are we happy to go to the vote on this? Yes, so we're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Congratulations, Mark. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on now to item number 5.7, the Mangawhai Sports Ground opportunity. Councillor Wethy is moving this item and Councillor Larson is seconding this at the point.
With an amendment.
Oh.
Removing the alternative motion, is that one?
Which is on the screen now at section D.
Okay.
No, it's section D, I think.
D for Delta.
Can you make it bigger, Kat? Sorry. Can you make it bigger on the screen? Wait. Scroll down a bit.
So this recommendation or the motion which is on the screen is different to what was distributed in the agenda earlier. So at this point, John Burt, to you to lead this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, if I can take the report as read, this item will be, or the matter will be very familiar to elected members, having had several workshops and council meetings in the last few months. The purpose of this report is really to provide council with the information relating to the engagement that was done in recent times with the community and particularly the Mangawhai community, and then seeking to council to make a decision based on all the previous work and this report as well. So the good news is that when the feedback we've had from the community is on the whole very supportive, in the order of 90% of respondents, particularly in Mangawhai, are supportive of council using the reserve contributions funds to purchase this land. I would note it's just the first stage. There will be, if council approves the purchase, there will be further expenditure required in coming years, but that would need to be the subject of further consultation, particularly around long-term plans and that the further expenditure beyond the purchase is likely to be in the order of magnitude similar to or greater than what's going to be expended on the land initially. This is just the first stage, so just making that point. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for clarification, elected members? Like no questions for clarification. Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Councillor Wethy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think this has been a combination of quite a lot of work that's gone on since November of last year, and it's heartening to me to get to this stage. But one of the things that I was always a little concerned about was the reaction of the community when this was being promoted during the online consultation. To have any sort of consultation with the community during my certain 6 years with council, I've never heard of anything coming in with a 93% support. That is absolutely huge, and it just demonstrates what a deficit the Mangawhai community has had over the years with the lack of good sporting and recreational facilities. We've got MAS, which is an activity zone, but that doesn't in any way provide the recreational areas to do so many more traditional sports that are part and parcel of New Zealanders' lives. And this, I hope, over the next few years, as it's developed, will start providing a high-quality sporting arena that will enable the clubs that used to be in Mangawhai. The Mangawhai Cricket Club hasn't existed for years now. It was a force if you go back to the 1900s. And I'm very, very heartened that the community has jumped aboard this initiative and can actually will I'm sure, look back in 5 or 10 years' time and say, hey, that was a very forward-thinking decision that was made by this council that we have today. The reason I put in the amendment and putting into council a requirement to sit down with the vendor to look at having his name reflected in the final naming of whatever reserve or park we finally agree to, is that he has been a long-term member of the Mangawhai village community. Not only has he owned that farm, but he's grown up in the community. He's been an active sportsman and a very competent sportsman in his youth. He gifted one of the old historic buildings on his farm to Mangawhai Historic Village, and people who have been to see that village, you'll see it's being restored by the Historic Village Trust and is now used by the Daring Trust to display artefacts that have been recovered from the Daring. And so he's also contributed to some of the history of Mangawhai Village in collaboration with a writer. So I think it's very, very apt that someone with that history of the community should be remembered through a name for this park. And that's why I hope that we can come up with a suitable name. He has been very reticent in agreeing or even thinking about that, but I understand from good authority that as the sale progressed, he's become a little bit more sympathetic to having his name shared in perpetuity, basically, with that park. So I think I'm very, very pleased. I've been looking forward to the stage to sort of leave something to the Mangawhai community that will be there forever and will be, I'm sure, used by many, many, many members over the years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, securing good proximate sports grounds in Mangawhai has been something that Councillor Wethy and I have been talking about and trying to push for some time. And, you know, obviously there was not adequate planning in that regard. And I think we're really fortunate to have landed this suitable opportunity. And that's partly due to Councillor Wethy's work behind the scenes to identify piece of land and to find someone that was prepared to sell it to us. And I think that also the staff work behind the scenes to make it happen. It's been really good, really responsive. So easily could have missed out on it. So yeah, really critical piece of infrastructure for the right location. With regard to the naming, I think we need to bear in mind that people of Mr. Ehrlich's era and background are usually very modest people, and I think that council should be quite positive in asking that we would like it to be named after him. And I think it would be entirely appropriate to be called something like, you know, Ivan Ehrlich Park. I note that Mr. Burt is on the phone in the background there at the moment, so he won't be hearing what I'm saying. But I'd like that conveyed to him if possible, that, you know, probably need to be a bit proactive in actually saying to Mr. Ehrlich, would this be okay with you? Would you be happy with this, with specific suggestions, rather than just saying, what do you want, or whatever, because he's going to possibly be modest about it. So yeah, that would be great if we could get that. I'd like to see following acquisition, prior to development of it, we actually get a sign up early on that Mr. Ehrlich can be proud of in his time. Thank you.
Thank you. Further statements? Councillor Curnow.
A quick statement from me, and I echo Councillor Wethy's comment about the positivity of the feedback, and I believe it would have been even higher if people actually understood what reserve contributions were for. Yeah, the overwhelming against were wanting to apply the money for purposes that we can't actually apply it to. I think the real challenge here, again, reading from the feedback, is to manage the expectations around what's actually going to be delivered. There were some very substantial sort of suggestions that came through, but just to put a little question forward for the future council, is it a good place for the Library Cultural Centre as well? Just leave that on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Collins, statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is really cool. I mean, Mangawhai needs this. There's no doubt about it. Totally in support of what we're doing here and the work that's been done. I just wanted to actually just point out that I hope that the any communications that go out in regards to this decision and any work moving forward is very clear to our community that that there is a lack of infrastructure in Mangawhai to start with. I think people, sometimes other parts of the district, think that Mangawhai has everything, which is not the case at all. We're retrospectively fitting out a city at this point. And also communicating the reserve contributions funds and how they're actually collected, how the fact that that money has come out of Mangawhai and is now being reinvested back into Mangawhai. We haven't used debt or rates to be able to fund this. I just think that's really critical for the council's communications for the rest of the district, so that hopefully there is some understanding that one side of the district is not paying for another side of the district. There's just some confusion over what has gone out into the public sphere so far. I'm correcting people all the time, bless them. So if we could be clear about what we're doing, then the community won't be confused. So, but I'm so excited. Mangawhai, thank you.
Thank you. Further statements? Councillor Wills.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Really briefly, I understand where Councillor Wilson comes from, having represented this side. There's been that east-west thing, but I wanted to focus on the positive consequences of this. At that level of just under around the $6 million, having even that shortened community consultation gives me real confidence that that's what that community wants. They've had their chance to have a say, which hasn't always been the case in a lot of our decisions. We've had to just get on and make them. So that gives me added confidence that this is what they want, and this is something that's going to add value to that community. And so I look forward in a few years going down there to see where the progress has been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce Brucky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to echo what the others are saying. And you can do a comparison with Dargaville and how we've been trying to retrofit our current sportsville. Like, we had things scattered all around the district and parents were divided. You couldn't go to one space. This potentially eliminates that problem moving forward. And I think that's wonderful. And my Ministry of Justice background says kids in sport aren't in court. And it's just a necessary means to keeping our kids busy, active and fully participating in their community. So I think it's awesome. Well done.
Thank you. Further statements? Quick statement from me. Yes, this is a nice corollary, word of the day, to the earlier arts, culture and heritage strategy for council to be making a heroic sports-related decision here, notwithstanding the fact that this is linked with the reserve contributions, and as we're hearing, the growth that's already happened in Mangawhai. This isn't even about future growth. This is growth that's already there, and putting that money aside. The community feedback and engagement here is significant for its detail, and for the future council, if this council today decides to be doing this, for the future council and councils, there is plenty of scope for opportunity to build in a great location, which is near the current sports fields of the Domain and near the shared path. This is right on the shared path that is, of course, the incredibly important active mode transport route right through the centre of Mangawhai that this council has also been building. These aren't sports fields in a random location. This is like the kind of thing that if you're a seagull flying above 5 or 10 or 50 years from now, you'll say, this was put in the right place, with a hill, you know, as well as flat land, and located near other land, located near the primary school, and located beside that shared path, which will be the future great transport link for Mangawhai. So, look, this is one of those kind of really sweet council projects that don't come along very often. And I would like to particularly congratulate Councillor Wethy for having brought this matter to the attention of the council and for your work in the background. This really is a very great legacy project for you, Peter. Yes, for us all, but for you as a councillor at the end of your time as an elected member here, and with your long association with Mangawhai yourself. So I'm acknowledging that here, and I think it's very, very important for those who are to come in the future that they know that this council was leaning into this opportunity, that you led and helped bring this opportunity to this table with the help of our commercial team with John Burt and Sue Davidson, who've been working in the background with the vendor and ultimately leading it through the comms team with the entire community who has really engaged with this idea. It's really rare and special and very, very rare for Kaipura District Council. A decade ago, if you'd said by the way, let's spend $6 million buying some land for sports fields when Kaipura District Council had $80 million of debt. That was not a possible consideration at that time. So this is a great signal for how far this council has come in this time. And Councillor Wethy, like I say, I acknowledge you. Thank you for everything you've done here. And thanks to the council for all of the sensitive work that we have done here as well. And well done, team. Kia ora. Any further statements? Councillor Wethy, closing statement.
Just thank you. Just following up on what Councillor Collins has mentioned about the comms being very, very important. Certainly, I won't say it because that's self-evident, but one other aspect I think comms should take into account is that while this is the purchase of the land, as John Burt has already mentioned, going forward, it could be, 3 to 5 years before the sports field are fully developed. And we know from Sue Davidson's projections on reserve contributions coming from the Mangawhai area that we will have money coming into that fund that will enable us to develop those fields. Again, no cost to the ratepayer. So we need to let people know that that is how the development is going to be. And secondly, the community will be thoroughly consulted on what they want in terms of the formatting of these sports grounds. There has, if you read through some of the flavours of some of the submissions, they've got a lot of ideas, and it would be very remiss of this council or the future council to actually go ahead and do anything without taking those people along with it. So that will be the success of it, will be if you've taken the community along with the way you develop these sports fields, because if you do that, you're going to have a world winner. And while the chairman of MAS keeps on talking about the Olympic quality skate park, then we might have an Olympic quality other sports field. So who knows? At any rate, it's a fantastic achievement, and I sort of thank everyone.
I'm going to try.
Helping get this across the line. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So we're putting this item to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. That was a unanimous vote, Mr. Maris. Thank you. Congratulations, John Burt, and congratulations, Mangawhai, on this decision regarding a sports ground there. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5.8, welcoming communities, application for a specific piece of funding here. Welcoming communities, I'm seeking a mover for this item. Councillor Wills, thank you, and Councillor Curnow seconding this. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the paper as read. We have a mission in our council of nurturing our people in place by inspiring a vibrant, healthy and caring community, and a goal that talks specifically to diversity. We have an opportunity here to get funding to take some concrete steps towards our core purpose. The funding that is up for application is for 3 years. I've received a question about how we'll sustain our activities after that time. This project is entirely community-led, and how we would sustain it depends on the activities and the proposals that the community comes up with. So most of the costs will be incurred in the first 3 years, when we will need the community and engagement advisor to actually engage with the communities and to establish relationships, and possibly for some events. After that time, it will depend on the activities or the program that the community comes up with, and in developing their strategy, they will need to consider how sustainable these activities are. So they may need to look to other sources of funds, such as grant applications or other funds, or if they're small events, there may be things that can be absorbed, for example, into the comms budget. For example, a welcoming communities brochure, if that's what they choose to do. So without wanting to make any sort of preemptive assumptions about what they might want to do, depending on the scale of what they have proposed, that will be something that they need to consider.
note in the paper that we are still engaging with iwi and that iwi support is required for this funding application. Questions?
Thank you. Councillor Dillavaris Woodcock.
Yes, thank you, Gillian. If we commit to this funding, apply for it, gain it, and a staff member a role is created, is that what implications does that have for their future employment? Are we obliged to continue to fund that full-time equivalent staff salary?
No, this would be a fixed term role and it's not a full-time position. It's the funding available is $50,000 a year, which is approximately 0.6 of an FTE.
Right.
So it would be a part-time employee for the period of the 3 years.
Right.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins, then Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, Julian, thank you. Just the other part of my questions that I sent in, just to get clarification. So we would apply for the 50,000 for 3 years and that would be the budget, would it? Like that would be it? There wouldn't be any, would we be putting in any further funding to be able to facilitate the projects that we're trying to achieve?
There is, through the chair, there is a small amount of additional funding available through the Immigration New Zealand of up to 10,000 if we proceed with the accreditation aspect of it. So that would be part of it, up to a maximum of about $9,500, but it's quite a small amount. So again, these are community-led projects. You know, the budget would need to be part of that. But it may well be if there are events like Neighbours Day or something like that, that they could be locally funding, or we can look at other things like providing venues or other ways of sponsoring the projects.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just reflecting that, you know, we managed to commit ourselves to $5.8 million worth of expenditure in 5 minutes, and now we're having at least that much discussion on $50,000 a year. But I do wonder if the $50,000, it's you said in your report, it part funds the coordinator's salary, and also it wouldn't cover overheads either, would it?
Well, the overheads are a sunk cost. So when you say overheads, I guess we'd have to fund them with a computer, which is $1,000 or a couple of $1,000. They provide their own environment or the existing office space. And as I said, part fund a coordinator. It would fully fund a part-time coordinator, just to be clear.
I suppose I was wanting to clarify if it there would be extra costs associated with the council establishment that would arise as a result of employing this person, I suppose.
There may be some small costs, again, responding to the question by Councillor Wilson-Collins. There is additional funding available for some events or some initiatives. I see this as a core part of the business of my team, and so some of it may come out of my existing budget. But we're talking very small amounts here, you know, in the small thousands here. But I'm not anticipating that there'll be high overheads, and if there are, then we need to rethink our strategy, because you know, you don't have to spend a lot to make people feel welcome, and we need to frame our strategy around that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? Councillor Larson.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. Could you just explain how many people you're sort of dealing with, like how many new immigrants are coming into the district per year that you would be tending to in this regard?
So we haven't, that this will be part of the work that will be done by the coordinator. We don't have research on that, and this is part of the work that we'd need to do. The funding is offered to all councils, and the benefits of the funding are not only applied, or sorry, not only migrants to a community benefit from the funding. So the community in general would benefit from it by creating a more diverse and accepting environment and helping eliminate racism and accept diversity and other things. So I'm sorry, I haven't answered your question. The answer is I don't know, and we don't have statistics on that yet. but that is part of the work that we would need to do when we get this coordinator.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Wills, question.
Mr Mayor, a question, I've read through the application. There's no specific instruction that I can see that it designates it towards any ethnic group, or even, for example, overseas as opposed to internal within New Zealand, migrants to our community. It just identifies, am I correct, it identifies anybody that comes into the Kaipura from outside the Kaipura?
It's targeted towards newcomers, but because it's funded and sponsored by Immigration New Zealand, they are thinking more specifically of migrants, students, REC workers. However, I know that in Whangarei, that part of what they've agreed to do is look at iwi who are returning to their local district as a priority before they start looking at some of those other communities. So really it does look at all newcomers. And by creating a welcoming environment for all newcomers, then those other international, perhaps, migrants will also be made more welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Larson.
Oh, thank you. Yes, interesting. I mean, central government, the central government initiative, is that correct?
Yes, Immigration New Zealand is funding.
And do you think that they appreciate the difficult times we have with limited rates to fund everything and these social initiatives that they're rolling out? And do you think that perhaps they could just pay for it? Like, why do we have to go back to our ratepayers for another $150,000 when we can't cover our basic services now?
So when through the chair, we're not going back to our ratepayers.
Yes, Councillor Larson, I'm confused by your question because that's like, yes, we're applying
for central government funding.
Yes.
To do this work.
So this is just a decision to approve it. It doesn't have.
So just to clarify, the application requires a approval by the council.
Motion.
So, yes. So are we clear?
Yeah, I heard that.
Your question is resolved. Like, yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Gillian. Councillor Wills is the mover here.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I noted the surprise on your face when I rushed to put my hand up in support of this motion, and I want to speak to that. Is that as a farmer, I employ people that come from overseas. So I have a personal experience of the process and the difficulty of those people to fit into the community. And yet a couple of them have been with me for a number of years to the point where they're now bringing their family over and applying for permanent residency. And isn't that what we're looking for in Kaipura, is a dynamic growth? And this is an opportunity at the government's expense at this stage to look at the ability to make them feel more comfortable and more welcome in our community, therefore hoping that they will stay. So I guess in my mind, this is a great way to see if we can slow down the churn of them arriving and not settling and becoming established and then departing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Curnow.
Yes, as an immigrant myself, a long time ago, it would have been really nice at the time if there'd been a program of events to help me settle in, because arriving in New Zealand, we are a very friendly country on the surface, but it's quite hard to kind of get those deeper connections going. And so a program of events that would help the newcomers get past the friendly shopkeeper and into a space where you can actually make friends and supportive networks within your community, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Joyce Paki.
I'd like to support this. I think it's really important. We've seen a trend over the last 10, 15 years with the population growth for our Middle East and Latin American ethnicities growing. So I think if you take a look at that trend for Kaipura alone, it's increased, and it will be much different next year when we roll out the census and get those percentages more accurate. I think it's critical that we are an inclusive council, and this is just part of the way of making that happen. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Further statements, councillor Wilson-Collins.
I'll be extremely brief, but I just want to tautoko the inclusivity is super important and everything that's been said, I completely agree with. I'm very excited to apply for this funding.
Thank you. Thank you. Further statements? Quick statement from me is one of the duties of the mayor is to lead the citizenship ceremonies for new immigrants to New Zealand. And it's a really fabulous, as I always say to the new citizens, it is a fabulous and a favourite event of mine as the mayor is to see the joy on their faces when they get to become a New Zealander and become an Aotearoan, as the rest of us are. And the step that, as Councillor Curnow, an immigrant, sorry, say that that way, by her own acknowledgement, has acknowledged that the challenges of a community such as Kaipura is that it may not be open to sharing the splendours of the place and the rest of the community. With the rest of the community. So I absolutely applaud this. Councillor Wills, just to your point about seeing my perhaps raised eyebrow when you mentioned that you wanted to move this. I absolutely applaud your point regarding the workers that you have. And I was thinking that perhaps, okay, slightly tongue in cheek here, perhaps you were moving this because you live outside the district and you get welcomed back in almost every page. So, wow. You're the only one around the, and so you know what a great welcoming is. Yeah. So it's wonderful. So it's wonderful to have those lived experiences from you. Thank you as a contribution here. And but the important thing that I see here is that Kaipura District Council is open and inclusive and saying, yeah, come on in. The water's fine. And that's what seeking this funding sends those messages. And so I support this. Kia ora. Any further statements?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to echo your sentiments in that regard for those that have been to visit us for the term. Thank you for letting us welcome you here and feel well.
Thank you. Any further statements? No further statements, Councillor Wills, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Being the adult in the room, I'll now focus on my final statement. Jokes aside, it was an interesting experience when I went out campaigning 3 years ago, because I built up the fact I was third generation from the coast out at Mahuta. So I thought that was going to give me an in. And so I went door knocking and said, yes, I'm third generation Wills. My family's been around. My brothers are here. A lot of family are here. Went out to Bailey's Beach and I knocked on the door there and I met people from Italy, Sweden, Austria, England. Hardly a person in Bailey's Beach had been there longer than 5 years. The third generation thing didn't mean damn to them. And it was really an interesting eye-opener. Because migration is not a skin colour, it's just where you come from. And that's a whole community out there, and I'm picking on Bailey's Beach, where a significant proportion of them have only been in the Kaipura less than 7 years. And some of them may have enjoyed the opportunity to have made friends or been welcomed in. So that's also why I support it, because my experience in meeting so many new people that have come into the Kaipura. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we're putting this item to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carry. Unanimous, Mr. Maris. Thank you. Thank you, Gillian. Best wishes with that application for you. Thank you. Right, we're moving on now to the speed limit review consultation item. And for this item, we have the team from NTA led by Heather Osborne.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Worship. I am here, I'm a consultant planner on behalf of the NTA, but I'm also supported by Vishali Sankar from the NTA. So we're here to seek your approval for going out to the community for consultation on.
Oh, sorry, just pause for a second. I need someone to move this item.
I've had my hand up for quite a while.
Sorry, thank you, sorry. Councillor Wills is moving this item. I'm seeking a seconder here. This is just to put it onto the table, sorry. Councillor Joyce Pucky, thank you. Apologies, sorry. Heather, please continue.
Thank you. So as I was saying, we're seeking your approval to go out to the community for consultation on both the Potor Peninsula and the West Coast area catchments. So you'll be familiar with Sean Baker and his process and the review that has already been undertaken for the Kaiwaka West and Mangawhai catchments, where a body of work was undertaken to go out and undertake similar consultation with the community, and that has now progressed through past the recommendations report that was approved and has the infrastructure been put in place now. So as part of the statement of proposal that we're seeking to go out to the community, there are two minor changes, and as part of the agenda that has gone to you today, we're also seeking a delegation to the Chief Executive to make some minor drafting amendments. And there are two small amendments I'd just like to bring to your attention at this stage. And mainly they are due to some of the information that has been extrapolated from the Wakakotahi Megamaps system, where the existing or current speed limits haven't pulled through in terms of what they are on the ground. So one that has been brought to our attention is Babylon Coast Road, which currently in the statement of proposal is showing that it has a current speed limit of 50 kilometres per hour. And in fact, there is only a short section of Babylon Coast Road that is 50 kilometres per hour, and the majority of it is open road, 100k. And the other one is Glinks Road, which is currently showing as 30 kilometres, but in fact also for the majority of it is 100 kilometres per hour. So we would like to, through that Chief Executive delegation, if we have this item approved, go through and add 2 additional lines to the statement of proposal. Otherwise, I would like to present the report as, or take it as read, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for clarification, Councillor Withy?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yep. Few of us were involved with the speed limit review over at Mangawhai and the hearing process, those were on the hearings panel. That was taken quite a long time ago. Now, we knew from what Sean had told us that it was going to be a long time between the hearings and its process coming up to final resolution to the time it was implemented. And what I'm seeing now, because it's only in the last few months that it's been implemented, there's a lot of comment about what the hell am I saying about this? A lot of that, I'm sure, is because people, at the time the consultation was being done, never took any notice of what was being proposed. And it's only which can be 12 or more months later that they suddenly start getting active. Are you taking into consideration the process that we went through over there, and perhaps learning from that to try and get more active involvement in this consultation, so you don't run and just repeat the whole thing again that we're currently?
Through the chair, absolutely. And I think that it is important to look back at that consultation process and see if there is any opportunity to improve. And I actually just today have met Gillian, so I have been in contact with the comms team to start a process for identifying the best community groups to get in contact with and have early or forewarning to undertake this consultation, ensure that we're making the most of any drop-in person-to-person sessions that we're having, but as well actually identifying community groups that will have an interest, as well as marae and schools, and reaching out to groups that there's an established relationship with to make sure they're kept informed of when events might be coming up or any information in terms of responses that we've had or the general feedback that we're getting so that, yeah, we can get the best response possible.
Good luck. Good luck with that.
Thank you, councillor Curnow and councillor Vincent.
I'm just going to lean in on that a little bit, councillor Wathy's point, because I've been having conversations with a gentleman over in Mangawhai who's now irate that a place that did have a 15km/h space is now, rate is now 30km/h. So his comment to me was, I've been meaning to do my submission, but I'm going to give it to you. And I was like, way past that, the signs are up, mate. So I think it's just really important that people understand that this submission period begins and ends. And once it ends, there'll be hearings. And once the hearings are done, there is no more change to be done. Because, obviously for some people, the submissions are whenever you feel like it. So, and he's got good justification for his concerns, but he's kind of missed the boat. So I think really leaning in on that, being utterly clear about that.
Through the chair, I would absolutely agree, and I think that's where there's real benefit in having face-to-face sessions where there will be an opportunity or someone available with, say, a device to be able to fill the submission out while they're engaging with whoever is there. And so that we do capture some of that feedback at the time, because I think we all know we lead busy lives. It's hard, even if you have the best intentions, to sit down and make sure that you are putting your voice to a submission.
If there was a process of kind of identifying which are the changes that are most likely to create disagreement or misunderstanding, and even doing a door-to-door on those sort of really targeted ones, and going, this is what we're suggesting. Are you that?
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Vincent, question for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did submit a question yesterday late morning, but it may not have got as far as you. So my question was, could we have some evidence of the problem we are to address here? Presumably there are statistics on the number of fatal and serious injury accidents in this area for, say, the last 5 years. If so, I would like it included in the statement of proposal. I'd like to see it at the meeting too, if possible.
Yes, we did receive the question. Apologies, the response hasn't made its way to you, but the answer is, in summary, that there will be a technical report that also supports the statement of proposal, and some of the information in terms of crash risk data will be included in that technical information. We have it in raw format at the moment in terms of numbers, but there's nothing that's in a presentable format to be able to show to you. And the crash risk data is generally presented as 3 different types of risks. So there's a critical risk, a personal risk, and an infrastructure risk. And the critical risk will tell you the number of crashes per kilometre for that particular road. And then the personal risk takes account also of the volume of users using that road. So that's the risk that you might have as a road user going out onto that section of road. And the infrastructure risk is a technical assessment made by a safety engineer in terms of, I think there are 8 categories in terms of the design of the road and whether it presents a risk because of
The camber that goes the wrong way or something like that. If it's too narrow or. So, but you're saying, will that come to us before this all goes out?
We can make that available. It will be ready definitely before the consultation period, which starts on the 28th of October, likely the week prior. But we can make that available if you would like to see it prior. Otherwise, it will be available through all of the channels for consultation and on the website as well.
Yeah, it might be handy if that were possible, just even if it's informally just circulated to members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've just been through this process, obviously, in the east, and so there is quite a bit of anecdotal feedback coming from people about how it has worked. And I see on page 3 of the statement of proposal there, we have this huge continuum of speed limits with 20, 30, schools 30, 40, 50, schools less than 60, 70, 100. And so the situation that, which you might not hear because you're not sort of out there, we have is that there are so many different speeds, it's very difficult for people to keep track of where they are and what they have. And what we've got is, for example, there's a real police presence at Mangawhai that's, completely otherwise law-abiding and safe people being targeted and fined, and it's happening now at Kaiwaka. And just bear with me because I'll just give you an example. At 7 o'clock in the morning, a plainclothes car on the hill down below the school, pulling people over and ticketing them at 52 an hour. It used to be 50, but now it's 40. And, oh no, we've got to keep the school safe. There is no school safety issue because there is nobody on the street at all. This just looks like revenue collecting to our ratepayers. What I want to see is, and I'll try to put this into a question very soon, Mr.
Yes, we're looking forward to this being converted into a question, Councillor Larson.
Had from others already. Is can we incorporate into this some of the lessons that we have learned and are now learning with the Eastern implementation, in terms of making it simple for people and just not making it over regulation and ending up being a revenue collecting exercise with no safety gains, because it's really starts to annoy the ratepayers unnecessarily.
Yeah, and I think the answer to this is that whilst we're independently reviewing the Potul and West Coast catchment areas as part of this work, as part of the new setting of speed limits rule, we're also required to look at a regional speed limit review. And as part of that, there will be a consistency that starts to develop in terms of the speeds that are coming into play. The direction that we're heading is actually focusing on speeds that have an increment of 20 kilometres per hour. So you will see that most of the urban roads that have typically had a 50 kilometre speed limit will have 50 kilometre speed limit. And so as each area is reviewed, there should start to be a better understanding in terms of road users being in environments across every district, every area within a district, understanding what the road environment is telling them about what that speed limit should be, and acknowledging that it will take some time for those acknowledgements to be recognised by the community who are using the roads, because it will be a big transformation, not just on a district level, but regional and national level as well, as we start to review all of the areas.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? Councillor Joyce Paki.
Kia ora, thanks for that. I'm interested in your consultation, because it talks about notifying and public notice, and if my advice is go to the people and ask them, but what is your intent around consultation with our community over this side?
So through the chair, we're in the process of developing a comms plan that will hopefully try to set out the most effective way of engaging with any, as I mentioned earlier, existing community groups, but also getting context for every marae that is in the catchment. So not just looking at things on an iwi or hapu level, but also addressing the facilities or spaces that are being used within the road catchment that might be impacted directly by the speeds outside those particular venues. And so it will also consist of, I've mentioned the drop-in sessions. We're hoping to have 2 of those. but also having an email that is readily available for anyone to ask questions through, also to lodge submissions, all of the information available on the website, and also going out through all of the normal channels that we'll take advice from the KDC comms team in terms of the most effective ways of going out. I think Gillian may already have some ideas in terms of what could be improved on from the last process that we went through for consultation.
Thank you. Councillor Wills, was that your hand? Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is the last chance to process this under the previous bylaws. Is that correct?
Through the chair, we've moved away from the bylaw, which has been revoked, and we're now working with the National Speed Limit Register. So there's a new database, which is on a national level, that actually holds all of the road speed information. There is no longer a reference to bylaws in terms of being the reference point for speed limits. Not sure if that answers your question.
It doesn't.
Sorry.
Start again. I understood when Sean did the presentations that this was rushed through, or not rushed through, this was processed through at this time to take advantage of a similar process that we did on the East Coast. Because, again, the question is, this is not part of the new, under the new regulation where it has to go to the regional council for final sign-off. Is that correct?
Yes, apologies. It's a process.
So the district council will have the final sign-off on this because it's been put through in this manner.
Correct.
If we don't approve this today, it will then have to revert to the new legislation, which requires the Regional Transport Committee to sign it off.
Correct. It would likely be included in the regional speed limit review, in which case it, would be going through that process instead.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Will this all be funded by central government, the review and putting up of the resultant signs and everything? Or?
Through the chair, in terms of funding, there are budgets that have already been allocated through the long-term plan for each district. I would ask for Charlie if there's anything you would add to that.
Through the chair, yes, this would all be funded out of from Wakawahaki's Road to Zero programs. All of the speed limit reviews, we've got a particular amount of funding for this LTP, which would then again, we'll get another set of amount for the next LTP. Since we're moving out to the regional speed limit program, everything, all the infrastructure support that we need will all be funded out of the next LTP as well. So
the funding's coming from central government, not from ratepayers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
How much is it for this process?
Through the chair, we don't have any particular amount as of now, because at this point, all of the fundings that was initially allocated for the speed limit review has been split up because of the rule changes that has been implemented as of now. So it will all have to be.
I see. You don't know because it's through NTA. It's all pulled.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Joyce Paki.
Can I ask for clarity or for ease of people participating? You've put in the proposed speed limits. Are you asking the community if that is correct? If they say no, that it just stays the same? Is that what's being asked?
Through the chair, as part of the process, we go out to ask if there is any feedback in terms of if we've got it right. If there were overwhelming submissions and any recommendations for changes, we would then put that into a recommendations report that actually comes before council again to look at the submission that has been received, as well as there being a hearing process for any submissions and the reasons to actually be tested. So we would still have a robust process to make sure we understand why we've got it wrong, if we have got it wrong, and definitely the door is open for reviewing and making changes if we see that there is reason to.
Making changes as in leaving it as it is? That's my question.
Yeah, well, there are options that would include keeping it as it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Vishali, for your presentation and the very detailed answers you were able to give. Detailed questions from elected members. As you can see, everyone's very, very passionate about roading. Comes to Kaipura District Council. So thank you for that. Councillor Wills is the mover here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As someone born at Te Kaipura Hospital, I've got a statement on this matter. In that there was a question asked by a previous councillor before this meeting about whether it justified or was necessary or what was the issue. One of the interesting things to note, as somebody that's over here a lot, is that quite a number of our crashes, unfortunately, are not recorded. Probably outside State Highway 12, probably 80% of the crashes are not actually publicly reported. They're actually cleaned up by the locals. So it doesn't help the data capture. But there's the community of Bailey's Beach has been waiting for this review because they've got issues with people speeding through that community, and even the current 50 kilometres an hour when there's no footpath for safety. So they are looking forward to participating. I'm sure on the other side of it, there'll be people on the Koto Peninsula where there's a risk of it going down to 80 kilometres an hour that are going to be just as adamant the other way. But that's for the next council. Having been on that previous speed review for the East, I do support the comments made by the councillors, Mr. Councillor Wethy, that it does need to be improved, because I actually supported this having had no negative feedback. But as I mentioned now, the signs are only just going up many, many months after that initial consultation. And so people are then now looking to have a say when it's too late. So I hope that can be rectified in this next council process. But if we support this motion, it will allow the district incoming council to manage the process and the local communities to contribute more than if it's not made advantage of and it's allowed to roll over to the new legislation where the regional council will actually have the final say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Joyce Pucky as the seconder here.
I've got nothing to add.
Thank you. Are there further statements?
A quick statement that, sort of having been involved in the hearing process on the last one, the thing that surprised me most was how few people complained about speed limits being reduced. So it's going to be really interesting to see whether that carries over to the West Coast as well. The overwhelming majority of people were happy to see speed limits reduced. And in fact, some of them were quite upset that we weren't reducing them far enough. So that was very interesting, if I remember.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further statements? No further statements. Are we happy to go to a vote now? Yes? Yep. Okay. All right. We're going to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Maris. Thank you again, Heather. Thank you, Vishali, for your attendance this afternoon. And good luck, Gillian, with the engagement with the community on that. Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5.10, the Kaipura District Council Water Safety Plans. And I'm seeking a mover for this item. Councillor Curnow, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Wilson-Collins, thank you. And I just have, it's a matter regarding the title of this work. It's about drinking water safety plans. Because to me, water safety plans is about swimming. And if you go Water Safety New Zealand is about swimming skills. Yeah. So perhaps for the go forward here with this work, it ought to be called Drinking Water Safety Plans.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think here the title is a bit misleading, but when you get into the detail of the report, it's clear that we're talking about drinking water safety plans. So drinking water safety plans form an integral part of water safety planning and supplying safe water to our community. So the framework that we have chosen to create our drinking water safety plans requires that there is commitment at the highest level of the organization to safe drinking water. So part of that requires the council to declare or to adopt a way of supplying water that is safe, and they commit to safe drinking water through supporting barriers and ensuring that risk management is at the highest level. And this is part of that process that we present here. And this report, if it is adopted, will be incorporated into the drinking water safety plans that we'll be submitting to Taumata ROI. So I take the report as read and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Curnow?
Now, I may be about to ask a really silly question, but these reports, they haven't come to council yet,
Not yet, no.
Are you planning to get them to council before submitting? Because I'm not sure, is that going to work?
No, the reports are operational.
Right.
And, but because the drinking water safety planning framework has got 10 components. And component 1 is this one that we are doing now.
Right.
Which is a commitment by council to water safety planning. And that commitment will get incorporated into the operational drinking water safety plans, which we are submitting on by the 14th of November, 2022 to Taumata ROI.
Okay, so there's no need for them to come to council for approval before they go. It's just the commitment that you need council to make.
Yes.
To be part of this process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Delavaris Woodcock.
Mr Mayor. Hello, Donna. If council adopts and commits these principles, if we look at the last bullet point on 366, the principle of continually improving our practices by assessing performance against corporate commitments, stakeholder expectations and regulatory requirements. My question is the delivery of water in big 20-litre containers or 10-litre containers to Kaipura residents on the raw water supply line still an ongoing issue? And if so, are we not going to be in breach of these principles that the stakeholder expectations are not, I think, align with knowing that we have an issue there that has still not been rectified after some 5 years?
Through the chair, the problem that we have in Kaipura is acknowledged, and we are working with community and also our iwi liaison officers to get a solution. So as of today, we got approval, or they got approval to finance 10 tanks through the regional council, and we are contributing a small amount to that. So that issue in the near future will be resolved.
Oh, I thought there was an issue with roofing and asbestos that needed to be.
That is only one property.
Yes.
That has been highlighted within the documentation that the community presented to the regional council for financing. It's a grant that they have been approved to get.
That's great news.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Donick. You may sit back. Thank you. Councillor Kerner.
It actually, sort of having asked my question, I'm reasonably confident that this is a It is almost a procedural issue that we need to be part of, but yeah, we're required to be part of this. We have to agree to commit, and we should agree to commit. So that's the decision we're making. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Wilson-Collins is the seconder here.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just agree. It's a procedural motion that we have to get on with. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor De La Woodcock.
Oh, that it were just a procedural issue we have to get on with. Actually, the safety of drinking water is the whole reason why we are going to see the end of local democracy, possibly because of Havelock North and the unsafe drinking water in 2015, and that being the consequence and the pretext for totally reforming our water services delivery. So I have a different opinion to my fellow councillors, but I'm very glad to see our council adopting and committing to drinking water quality management. And I commend our council staff for achieving compliance with the New Zealand drinking water safety standards yet again and again. And I'm enjoying this lovely diagonal water. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you. Further statements? Councillor Kerno, would you like a closing statement?
Nothing further to add.
Thank you. We're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, we're moving on to the final of our decisions, which is regarding decision-making over the election period, which the council is about to enter. And so there are some clear recommendations here. And I'm happy to move these as written and seeking a seconder here. Councillor Joyce Paki, thank you. And so that puts it onto the table. We're being addressed here by Gavin Dawson. Kia ora, Gavin.
Kia ora, everyone. Just get those seconder in. So this is kind of like the one of the final stages, I guess, for this current council. And it's a two-stage process that occurs every at the end of every triennium. And the two stages are outlined in that report. And it's all about seeking continuity of governance throughout. We've got purposes like district licensing, which needs to continue on. And we've also got emergency management and other regional joint committees, which continue on as part of the regional council's terms of reference. So this deals with that transition, the two-stage transition, and also with delegations for that. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor De La Woodcock.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin. My question, I have two. I was wondering what item G is on being repaired for responsibilities that are unable to be delegated. That could come later, but my real considered question is, does this interim power delegated to the incumbent allow them to make a decision on the shortlist for the new chief executive?
No, that process is sitting, the new council would be sworn by that point. So anything to do with the appointment of the permanent CE is in the new council, as is, there's a very well-organised work program as well. And for the ET and staff have, so we don't anticipate any major issues to come through. It's business as usual, and we get the new council sworn in and just focus on that.
And G, the repealed missing powers that are now able to be delegated under these.
I'm sorry, councillor,
Sorry, page 371. There's a list of things that are unable, powers and duties that are unable to be delegated to the interim mayor.
Through you, Worship, I see that, G, that's just taken straight from legislation. I can't tell you what was repealed at what point, so.
So it had been repealed.
That has been repealed.
Already in some prior.
Correct.
Review of the legislation by government. Yeah.
So am I right that this is business as usual, like road closures or slips? No private plan changes or other sorts?
Through your worship, the report states quite clearly that it is for normal business as usual. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification? No further questions. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you. So this, I remember this item from the end of the last term. It looked very, very similar to this, and this is part of that continuity piece that council needs to be very clear in this space. It's a very straightforward process, and the officers have provided Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock with that clarity regarding the process for the appointment of the permanent chief executive. I can give an absolute assurance on my part that there is no intention at all in any way, shape or form for any decisions to be being made while I am mayor, further decisions being made regarding the permanent chief executive of the council. That is that all those decisions will be down the line by the new council. And those are decisions this council's already made regarding those timelines, but I'm very happy to make that still clear for the avoidance of doubt there. That would be it's a very clear perspective here. I'd like to commend the staff for bringing this item forward and helping to create a seamless transition for Kaipura District Council into this term. So thank you. Councillor Joyce Plucky is the seconder statement.
I'm just very thankful that there's a plan in place to get us through the next few weeks, so all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further statements? No further statements. Putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Right. I'm thinking at this point, we've been going for another hour and a half. I think we should take a break for 5 minutes. We will be taking probably another break as well later, but we'll take a break now for 5 minutes. And then we will resume with the information items. Item 6.1, the exceptions report. Thank you. Kia ora. Rolling, right, we have a quorum, thank you, Mr Maris. Right, we're picking up the agenda this afternoon at this point at item number 6.1, the exceptions report. And councillor Wethy is moving this, the noting of this item, and councillor Wilson-Collins is seconding this. Thank you, that puts it onto the table. So at this point, we'll hand to Chief Executive Louise Miller to take us through this exceptions report. Thank you.
Kia ora. So through the chair, as is our usual practice, if we deal with the financial element first, I guess the only comments that I would have is that, as you can see, year to date, we're doing quite well. The issues remain around the capital program, but as we've discussed previously, that's something that the team are working on and will be bringing back to the new council in terms of actual capital project deliveries. The team are looking at our ability to deliver the program that we have. But happy to take any questions. Sue isn't here today, but between us, Graham and I will be able to answer anything you have.
Thank you. If we can just focus on the financial section first, please, councillor Curnow.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the rates revenue section on page 375 of the agenda, page 3 of the report. And it talks about the water meter revenue being below budget. And is that a significant amount to the 232,000 below budget? And yeah, it just sort of, suddenly people are doing massive water conservation? Or is it just a minimal amount? I'm just can't quite get the scale of it.
For you, it's probably more likely just a timing issue.
Okay.
Where the readings go, especially in Dargaville, because the readings aren't equal, they don't divvy out the number of properties equally.
Okay, that's cool.
Maybe
Thank you.
a lot of water leaks.
Maybe.
Good hope.
Thank you.
And I do have one other question, and that's on the following page 376 around the other operating costs, with the yearly software licenses being quite a bit higher than we were expecting. I don't like sort of retrospective thinking, but how did we not know they were going to be that high?
It's just a phasing thing as well. It's just
Right.
upfront.
Okay.
Yeah. Budget was cost of the year.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further questions for clarification in the financial section?
Okay, on the.
Those are cheap round, Louise.
Yep. On the non-financial section, you'll see there's a little bit of a shift happening around the number of resource consent applications this year. I think you asked you last time, Mr Maris said he didn't believe at that time when he was looking up it was necessarily a trend at this stage, but obviously it's something that we'll keep our eyes on. And similarly around the performance, as I've mentioned a couple of times, we are experiencing some vacancies in our teams, and so it is likely that performance may drop off into as we progress through the year. Again, that continue to be reported into the council. And then finally, you'll see there's some additional commentary around the customer interactions with a little bit more detail as to what's happening and why. Happy to take any questions.
No questions. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Louise. Are there any statements on this? No.
I think focusing on the year to date, which at this early stage of the budget is probably the most logical to do. We're looking pretty healthy, particularly when you consider some of those software licenses with quite a substantial amount of money being paid, if you like, earlier rather than later, so that we'll catch that up as we go through the budget. The other thing that was a little pleasing to see is that we've had a much more substantial capital spend during August, so our year to date has started to improve. So hopefully we'll be able to keep that progression and gradually get back onto track as being equal to what we'd allow in the annual plan, so we don't have this last minute rush that we seem to have had in each of every year for the last 4 or 5 years. So that looks pretty good. And the only other thought was see that in the resource consents, we've slipped quite significantly, which occurred just about the time Mr. Maris went over to the States, I think, isn't it? So hopefully that'll come to light.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Nothing further to add, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further statements from elected members here regarding the exceptions report? No. Councillor Vincent?
Could contribute, Mr. Mayor, just that I think while the results may have slipped a bit in the building consent and resource consent area, these are difficult times, and particularly with resourcing. So if you could give the rest of the team that remains a pat on the back and an encouragement to keep going, that would be great, because yeah, it's a difficult time.
Okay, thank you. No further statements. We're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. That's the exceptions report received. Thank you. Moving on to the resolutions register. Councillor Curnow is moving the noting of the resolutions register, and I'm seeking a seconder here. Councillor Joyce Pucky, thank you. Thank you. Louise, over to you.
So through the chair, before we just move into questions, I just wanted to know, and I guess a reflection of this council's term, that when we first started, you will recall a number of the items on these resolution register had been going back many, many years. We now have 3 items which are kind of within our control that go back over a year. So there's been significant progress. So just to thank council for helping us move those along. Happy to take questions on what is on the register.
No questions or matters on the resolutions register. Very simple. Thank you, Louise. Councillor Curnow.
Just very quick, thanks to the staff for doing this and for the granular reporting that's happening in the update column. It's actually really helpful to see the most recent update sort of clearly spelt out like that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce Pucky is the seconder.
Nothing further to add, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further statements, Councillor Wethy?
Just quickly, it was very interesting that when I was approached in 2015 by the then president of the Mangawhai Golf Club, who is now a candidate for the award in these elections, about extending the lease of the golf club, I talked to the then chief commissioner, John Robertson, about it, and he sort of said, yep, we can extend it out. Well, since then, we've gone through leases, LTOs, and we've finally, I had hoped we would have had it on the agenda for execution. But I see the September update is documents, the LTO documents be finalised for execution. So that's not bad. If we can get that one off the delete list, it'll be a major achievement. Well done, everybody.
Right, thank you. Any further statements here? No further statements. We'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. That is the resolutions register noted. At this point, I would like to put in a motion to extend the length of the meeting. So I would like to move that, and Councillor Joyce Pucky is seconding that. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. And at this point, in our agenda for today, we have a recommendation to move into public excluded. This is for a few short items that we'll be discussing. And then we will return to the open session for valedictory addresses from elected members who are retiring at this point. So at this point, I would like to move that we go into public excluded. I'm seeking a seconder here. Councillor Wilson-Collins. Is there any commentary on this? No, thank you. Right, so we're putting this to the vote now. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Against, carried. Thank you. Ka kite anō. To those watching on the broadcast, thank you.